status. I would like her to still like me for, the rest of my life. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. I don't know. I tried to say 4 different sports at once. Maybe that's because Adam Scher's over on the other side. He dominates all sports, specifically MMA. Quick shout out here before we get going with the MLB slate. 10 games here. Odd Shopper sponsoring. Hit the like button, subscribe button, notification bell. But Adam Scher at Ship My Money DFS had quite the eventful weekend in Dallas, and we want to shout his praises here to start off today's show. Congratulations, Mr. Live Final winner.
Thanks. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Obviously wish I had won it solo, and hopefully I get the Tournament of Champions ticket because that's really valuable. But no, it was a lot of fun. It felt cool to not suck at a live final for once.
Yeah. So, well, congrats on that. But more importantly, tell the people about this Tournament of Champions because it's $1 million to first, right? The Tournament of Champions ticket is. I
don't really know anything about it other than it's $1 million the first. I don't know how big the field is. I know it's divisional round of the NFL playoffs. It's $1 million the first. You have to win a live final or a Millie Maker, I think, basically to qualify for it.
Yep. And there's some Millie Makers that don't even have it. So I think it's even more elite to get in now than what it was last year.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know the details. I just know that the ticket's valued at $80K. So I would really like to win the head-to-head.
Josh Engelman, your co-patriot, your +1, your sidecar, all of the great things. I'm sure you guys had a phenomenal weekend down there. He puts in asterisk co-winner because he has to do that. But I'm looking forward to the head-to-head. That's going to be wild, tracking that. Make sure you post a link over on your Twitter. But we have the Osmo Hall of Fame, and we're going to start off our show with that. Jordan Klein behind the virtual glass, best producer in the game, named Jordan Klein, and I don't think it's remotely close, but you guys know what to do here. When you take down a big W like Adam did, you download the Stokastic profile pick, you go to .com/avatar, tweet your wins to @Stokastic HOF. That'll be the Hall of Fame. And then you get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Doesn't get better than that, but right off the bat, shout out to DraftKings for a fun event in Dallas. Adam Scher is not a man of many words. He just needs to tell you that, hey, I took down the dub, 115,000 playing for that TOC ticket. Looking forward to that for sure. But then we also have Oscar, and it's beautiful when you see $20 turning into 663, 17, first, fifth, eighth. That's a pretty good night on 20 entries in the MLB streets. We've got big thanks to the team at Stokastic for Mr. _ Scorpion there, 233.9 on the FanDuel streets. That's a W for 30K. That's always fun to see. Plus Bob Crematola. Shout out to Josh Engelman for this little hit last night. Oh, that's nice of him. Listen to him and Ship My Money on the Deeper Dive. 37K. That's awfully nifty as well. So 3,800 into that. 10x ROI. Love to see it. Thanks to Shander Show, me, Digital B21. Look at this. Beautiful Minnesota stack for $1,000. And Michael Campbell. Never forget with the golf. To finish it out, Michael Campbell, shaky 12381. Love whenever he's in chat. Appreciate him. But guys, hit up @Stokastic HOF just like Adam did when you take down massive wins, especially if they're live finals. 115K. All right. Enough jerking you off, right?
Yeah. Josh did point out that according to me, he was my assistant. I did get a nice I got a nice one in on him. So he told the story this morning, but we're flying out of Dallas yesterday. We're getting ready to go to the airport. I look at my phone, flight is canceled. So they rebooked me on like a flight with a layover and shit. So I cancel that. I just rebook my own flight. We go to the airport. It's a little bit later in the day. We go to the airport. So me and Josh are, I couldn't find my boarding pass on my phone like quickly when I'm going through security. So that kind of was a thing, but I was able to get through without it. And then me and Josh are trying to figure out what gate we need to go to because my flight was before his. And so I'm like, bitching about the American website. I'm like, I can't find my boarding pass. Like, it shouldn't be this hard to find. And as I show Josh the phone to see if like he sees it, I realized that I booked it for 6:40 today and not 6:40 yesterday. And so there was someone we're on the tram between terminals at the time. And there's a lady standing there just kind of overhearing this conversation. And Josh said something to her about me being really stupid. And she said, but you're still friends with him. And I replied with, I'm actually his boss. He's my assistant. And he wasn't a big fan of that.
Okay. I was waiting. I guess the payoff, there was a payoff at the end of that story. I'm okay with how it ended up. You're an idiot, by the way.
Yeah, really stupid.
How are you so smart and then so stupid at the same time? You're the smartest dumb person I know.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? You could also just pay somebody 15K randomly. It's a better use of funds than other places you've spent 15K to book a ticket.
This is true.
Yeah.
People, dancers in Dallas really missed out on Saturday night.
Oops by them. Let me just say, oops by them. You could have gotten your number retired in the rafters like James Harden, but you know what? I guess you're just stuck talking baseball with me and the people. Hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell for the boss of Josh Engelman. Seattle plus 115. What? No, plus 155. Can't read numbers. And the Yankees here, 9 total runs in this one. Marco Gonzalez, Domingo Germán. I have zero confidence in either pitcher. I don't think we're going to really be worried about that. But anything that you really want to note about these pitchers, because I doubt it means you want to roster them.
Domingo Germán's really cheap on draft.
Oh my God, don't do it.
I mean,
I can't do it.
He's like 20% owned.
I don't care.
Pitching on this slate kind of sucks.
I know it does, but Domingo Germán kind of sucks.
Yeah, but he also has decent strikeout stuff. The Mariners don't have Julio Rodriguez. Like, it's not a safe spot. The guy's got an xFIP north of 5, but he's got about a 23% strikeout percentage, 3.8 implied run total for Seattle. 6,400 is too cheap of a price tag.
I know it is, but I'm going to have 0% because I think he's going to get. I don't understand the Seattle ownership.
I think the Mariners are a good play.
Okay. That's what we're getting at. The Mariners are perhaps one of my favorite teams on this slate to stack up. As you said, north of 5 xFIP, not good. And the velocity down. What's really noticeable to me is he's down almost 100 RPMs on his curveball from last year to this year. I'm just saying, if he's not getting swings and misses on the breaking stuff, it's not like he's throwing upper 90s and getting by some guys. Jared Kelenic, we'll see if he actually fixed some stuff in AAA here, batting 8th today, because he's slashing a lot better than what is it? This isn't even real numbers. He's just pathetic. 38.4% K percentage as well at the big league level. But Seattle, I just think they really stand out as a stack that's cheap, pretty easy to pair with your Max Scherzers of the world, and nobody is owning them. So great ballpark. How do you feel about Seattle?
Yeah, I think they're a good play, especially at this ownership. You know, it's a really volatile spot. And like I obviously just said, and you sort of hesitantly agreed, Germán's a reasonable SP2 option because he's so cheap and because there's not a ton of good pitching and several of the good pitchers are in tough spots. So like I understand why Germán's getting the ownership, but we shouldn't act like this isn't like a really volatile spot for Domingo Germán. We don't have a huge sample size on this guy recently. We know he's got decent strikeout stuff, but he's had injuries. He's had suspensions for domestic abuse over the last couple of seasons. So we don't have like a huge sample. If you go back to the start of the 2020 season, he's thrown a total of 962 pitches to right-handed hitters, and he's allowed a 214 expected ISO. He's thrown 757 total pitches to lefties, 155 expected ISO. You're also getting a park upgrade for Seattle. You know, Jesse Winker's $3,100 hitting second. He's had a disappointing season. Part of that can be attributed to bad luck. Part of it can be attributed to going from Cincinnati to Seattle, one of the best hitters parks to one of the worst. But now you're getting him in Yankee Stadium with the short porch. I mean, he's still a good hitter if you look at, underlying metrics. So I think he sets up really well here. The Mariners as a whole are really inexpensive. Frazier is cheap leading off. Crawford is inexpensive. You mentioned Jared Kelenic being up at 2K flat. He's been horrible in the major league so far, but he's still, a promising prospect. Kyle Lewis has plenty of power. It's, I think, a high upside stack in a volatile spot that's just not getting ownership.
Yep. I love them. They're going to be one of my 3 main lineups. I'll just tell you that from the get-go here. Jared Kelenic at AAA, much better. 289, 355, 551 slash line, 11 homers. Decent enough. What is that? 34 extra base hits. Look, I can read. That's great. But he's 2K flat. And Germán, as I said, I don't really know what to make of him right now. Obviously, do I expect him to have north of an 8 ERA and a 1.8 whip by the end of the season? No, I probably don't expect that, but I also kind of expect him to be more of a bullpen arm because, hey, Frankie Montas is there, by the way. Rip Trey Mancini season. No?
Wait, what?
You don't want to talk about Trey Mancini?
I just didn't hear what you said.
Oh, it's fine. Trey Mancini. He's a Houston Astro. That's the stone cold worst place ever to cheer for him.
Yeah. Definitely really sucks. I'm glad that he's going to a park where he's just going to hit a million home runs, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. I was hoping he would go to the Mets. That would have been an easy one, like just reuniting with Showalter. Makes it easy to root for them. Really difficult to root for the Astros.
Yeah. Crawford box season. Domingo Roman suspended for 75 more games than Deshaun Watson. You have any take there?
I mean, at least you didn't. At least you didn't bring up Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, let's just cancel you here as we get going. Yes, I'm hardwired. Jordan Klein, am I spotty? Is that kind of what's happening? I'm a little spotty. Let me see what I can do about it. As we move over to the Yankee side, this is the more pressing team to talk about because they're popular like they should be. 10.8% ownership share, second most popular team here on the slate. 9.9% top stack percentage for DK purposes. Aaron Judge is up to 6,400. Like, hello, how you doing? And pulling 20% ownership. Talk to me about your game plan for these Yankees bats.
It looks like a good spot. I mean, Marco Gonzalez isn't a total gas can, but he's also the type of pitcher that I'm certainly not afraid to take Yankees bats against. He doesn't miss a lot of bats, only a 12.4% strikeout percentage so far this year, 11.9% against righties. 150 expected ISO to righties isn't horrible, but it's not great. But really, it's just you have so much power in this Yankees lineup, and they're likely to put the ball in play against Gonzalez. Really small margin for error for him. Judge looks extremely good, even at 6,400. But outside of him, this team isn't even expensive. DJ LeMahieu is 5,200. No other player on DraftKings is above 5K. So it's relatively easy to stack this team. Obviously you're paying up a little bit, but there's some other, the other, teams like the Dodgers are more expensive, at least, towards the top of the order. So I do really like the Yankees here. Obviously they are going to get some ownership. We have them with the second highest ownership projection behind the Mets, but I think it's deserved. It's a good spot.
It's not even like a real question. Hey, favorite Yankee bat to get to?
The Judge guy.
Yeah, he seems okay. Paid that the man his man needs.
Yeah.
That's going to be what happens here. Just back up the truck, Mr. Steinbrenner, turn into your dad, and there you go. That's going to be what happens. Hey, if he wants to come to the Twins, sounds great. We'll take him. Give us the family-friendly discount, and we'll do it. But we got the Mets next up, minus 240. You talked about him a second ago. Washington, 8.5 total runs here. This Max Scherzer guy is pretty good at throwing baseballs, isn't he?
Yeah, he's not bad. Okay. It's a tough strikeout matchup here, but to some extent, who cares? Scherzer's 10-6, which I think, even though he is the most expensive pitcher on the slate, it used to be that especially on slates like this, if you had Max Scherzer on, he's going to be like 11.5, 12K, something like that. And then maybe you can kind of get down into the weeds and say, this Washington lineup really doesn't strike out a lot. There are a lot of lefties, and Scherzer is still very good against lefties, but he's better in, his same-handed split. But when you're talking about him at 10-6, and you're talking about a slate where the next highest, well, excluding Andrew Heaney in his limited sample this year, the next highest strikeout percentage is John Gray, who's like 5 points lower. It's not the perfect matchup, but it's still a below average offense in Washington, and it's still clearly the best, most talented pitcher on the slate in Scherzer.
Yeah, I got to feel pretty good about it. Plus, Juan Soto could get traded any minute, right?
Yeah, I mean, Josh and I talked about it this morning because I'd said that if you were looking to a Nats bat, obviously it would be Soto, and he is $1,100 less expensive than Judge, but you're also just going to be watching the dugout all game to make sure he doesn't start hugging people.
That's kind of funny. Brad Keller scratched for people keeping track at home. So White Sox offense, they were popular. Let's see what goon they decide to put out there, because guess what? The options weren't going to be good anyway for them. So this will be enjoyable. That spot got very intriguing. Hopefully it's just not a bullpen spot, because I thought the White Sox, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there in good due time. But on the other side of this one, Patrick Corbin, you said pitching isn't very good on this slate. And that's when you start saying weird things like, I have all the Patrick Corbin and I don't know what to do with my life. You're not rostering Patrick Corbin, are you?
No. I will, if I have to say something positive about Corbin, he's by pretty much every metric gotten ridiculously unlucky this year. I don't think he's a good pitcher, but the guy's got a 6.5 ERA with a 4 xFIP. He's only stranded 62.3% of base runners. League average, off the top of my head, I think is typically 70 to 75% range, somewhere in there. 379 BABIP, again, just insanely high, 1.5 home runs per 9. So he has gotten unlucky this year, but it's not a situation where like I think he's actually a good pitcher and he's gotten unlucky. I just think he's maybe not quite as bad as he has been. But still, when you look at the numbers against righties in particular, 218 expected ISO is actually higher than his 197 ISO allowed. 383 expected WOBA is in line with his 387 WOBA. So still certainly somebody that I think we should be targeting with bats.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about those bats, 85 degrees, wind blowing out slightly here. No real weather spots. I guess this is the only one that you have to think about because it is Washington, and there's supposed to be some kind of rain that's lingering around the DC area. You would know better than I do. You live in those parts. God knows why, because California is lovely. But
looks nice here, but I'm 45 miles away.
Yeah, problematic. 45 miles,
give or take.
Yeah, okay, but
maybe 30.
There you go. I was going to say I thought it was a little bit closer. Not that I live there, but I know everything I know from The Wire. Right?
Yeah, but like they barely.
DC,
there's not a lot of DC in The Wire, though.
I know, but I'm just saying they reference it and then you get familiar with the area and it's like 30. Where's Chevy Chase from you?
Probably like 45 minutes to an hour, I would guess. I'm not sure.
Okay. I've played some golf there. That's how I kind of refer to everything. But either way, Mets bats, that's the thing we should be referring to. They're popular. They're very, very popular. You get JD Davis 2,100. You get these platoon splits. And a lot of the changes the Mets have made have improved them against the right-handed pitching. But against lefties, do you still want to get to this Mets lineup going up against Patrick Corbin at their current ownership?
Yeah, I think the ownership is okay. You know, maybe a little bit popular, but we have them with a 13% chance of being the top stack, 13% ownership projection. And there's a nice mix of value in this lineup too. The top of the order is really expensive. You know, Nimmo 5,100 in the lefty-lefty matchup, and then Marte at 57, Lindor at 56, Alonso at 63. But you get some cheaper bats after that. JD Davis hitting fifth looks like a really strong value option at 2,100. Third base and outfield eligible looks really nice. So far this year, 168 expected ISO against left-handed pitching for him. If you go back to the start of the 2020 season, 158. But just a cheap bat that you at least has some pop and multi-position eligibility. Mark Canha is pretty cheap. Escobar is reasonably priced. So overall, I think they're expensive, but you can still get to them. They're a team where, you know, maybe if you go there, you're more likely to get to like Domingo Germán or something like that. But it's a good spot. Plenty of right-handed power here against Corbin.
Yeah, and I talked about it, or you talked about it. Juan Soto, Max Scherzer, 3.71 xFIP going up against lefties, 2.58 against righties. Yeah, I don't want to roster anybody against Scherzer outside of Soto. How about you?
Yeah, same here. And I mean, even Soto is probably somebody that's just like randomly in a lineup here or there.
Yep, it's kind of a Bikram yoga stretch. A little bit of that. You ever done that before?
Yoga?
Yeah, like Bikram yoga or anything?
No.
Okay, you don't live in LA. That was quick. Arizona plus 130.
I mean, there's people do yoga like in the courtyard outside my apartment, but I don't join them.
Are they attractive?
I'm too high up to tell.
Okay. Not that you would ever watch women provocatively move.
I mean, why would I look there when I can just see into the hotel rooms right across the thing?
Or
yeah, start that would
115 big ones for you girls. Let's go. It's all right. Today is interesting. Hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell as we move to the Diamondbacks and Guardians. Zach Davies on the mound. I don't know why, but he is. And then Cal Quantrill, just another spot of pitching. Zach Davies, if I ever roster him, punch me directly in the face. You have my permission. And then Cal Quantrill, no thanks. No pitching notes here, right?
No. It's kind of, and I mean, Corbin falls into this too, I guess. Like, if you're playing 150 lineups and for some reason, you need cheap pitching, but your lineup is also like too chalky to play Domingo Germán or something, then you can just kind of play Quantrill or Davies or Corbin and pray for the best. But like, there's no actual reason I would want any of these guys.
Yeah, we saw Ryan Rennebaum. It's great. But Trey Mancini to Houston, it's a bad beat for Adam, bad beat for the world. Let's talk bats, because I knew this game was going to be pretty darn quick to cover, because all we have to do is cover the bats. And I like the Cleveland side more, but so does the field. 9.1% ownership share there. A little bit of negative leverage, but this is one of those slates where if it's not the Texas Rangers, if it's not the Yankees or Mets, you're pretty much getting everybody else at some type of a ownership where you can kind of maneuver the lineup enough. If you're hand building, you can kind of piece it together using the ownership we have over on Cruncher, over on the site. If you guys are making some lineups in Cruncher, there's some definite easy ways to lower and reduce some of that ownership. So Cleveland's a team I feel like it's just fine to get to, but Arizona, you're not going to be getting to any of them, are you?
Maybe a little bit, but
Okay.
probably not too much. I think that Quantrill is one of the weaker pitchers on the slate. Not a total gas can, but only a 15% strikeout percentage, 4.7 xFIP. I do think Alec Thomas looks like a good value at 3,200. I certainly think you can make a case for Josh Rojas or Kettle Marte. But overall, it's a pretty weak Arizona lineup top to bottom. Quantrill hasn't been a gas can in terms of power. 1.14 home runs per nine, 165 expected ISO to lefties, 160 to righties. So I think those guys are reasonable plays, but I don't expect Arizona to be a priority for me.
Well, then we're just going to go back to what I was talking about. Going up against Zach Davies, definitely a good spot to be Jose Ramirez. Definitely a good spot to be a lot of these guys. However, I will say, you want to get to some lefties. 5.10 xFIP on the season, Zach Davies. That seems really, really bad, Adam.
Yeah, it's not very good. One weird thing about Davies this year is that he actually has a 26% strikeout percentage against righties,
Yep.
which is very Zach Davies like, but it doesn't really matter here because the Guardians are running out a lineup. I mean, they have four right-handed hitters, but two of them are Austin Hedges and Miles Straw at the bottom of the lineup. So not guys that you're typically going to be too excited or looking to get to intentionally, at least too often. There's no Franmil Reyes in the lineup, so that does remove some power. But you have a left-handed heavy lineup here, 173 expected ISO, and only an 11% strikeout percentage against lefties for Davis this year. We know Cleveland is difficult to strike out anyway. Jose Ramirez is the only hitter in the lineup above 5K. He's the only hitter in the lineup above 4,400. So it's a stack where you're getting some nice value and then also, a top third base option. But Steven Kwan's reasonably priced. Ahmed Rosario's price tag has come down over $1,000 recently. So this is somebody that, has some power, has some speed, just a relatively high ceiling shortstop option. That is at a reduced price tag. You get some power from Naylor. Jimenez looks okay. Nolan Jones, 3,100. That price tag's coming up, but still pretty cheap for a highly regarded hitting prospect that by every projection system should be above average in the major leagues. There's a lot of ways you can stack Cleveland, and they look pretty appealing here.
Yeah, Nolan Jones. Shout out, savior of the people, almost GPP winner the other night as well. I mean, I just keep playing this guy. He's super cheap, and for the most part, 527 expected slugging so far in a very early sample size, but still, it's not nothing. I definitely hitting over his head maybe for the moment because I don't think anybody projected him out to be this good, but looks pretty good at the moment. So let's keep that going, young man. Plus, you're not having to worry about too much of the ownership there, I don't think. Yeah, it's going to be a team that you can get to the pieces of Naylor, Kwan. That's going to reduce a little bit of that ownership. But Jose Ramirez, he should be popular on every single slate. He's really, really good at hitting.
Yeah, he is. And weirdly, third base isn't typically that strong of a position either.
Right.
Like you always have Machado. Sometimes you have Devers. You don't today. Arenado sometimes, but like it's not even like he's on the Rockies anymore. So it's like a weirdly not very strong position in general, which is another reason why Ramirez is just always popular.
We got a 499 super chat from Ryan Nelson. Iowa State. He saw the polo. That's what it was. Iowa State should be good on defense again. Will be in plenty of close games. Just have to hope for some positive regression. 1-5 in SBS, one score games. Yeah, it's called coaching. And Campbell, incredible recruiter, really bad game day coacher. Just saying, it is what it is. I love him because we have had more talent than we've ever had at Iowa State, my alma mater. But looking forward to this season still because hey, we're in the mix. We're in the mix, and anytime you can be competitive with the likes of Texas and Oklahoma, you're doing something right, which we've been the last couple of years. Deacon to the legend, $1.99 super chat as well. $25 single entry on FanDuel top pitcher play. Oh, Adam, I'm going to ask you to do what you never thought you would do, and that's make a recommendation on a FanDuel play on purpose. Give me your top pitcher for one lineup in the $25 single entry.
I mean, Scherzer. Like
There you go.
He's 11.5. If you can afford him, then him. But like again, it's always hard to answer questions like this because there's a million things that go into making a lineup. I would start with Scherzer. If I can't get there, then getting down to Gray or Clevenger. I mean, those guys are good as well.
Yep. DePaul better than Colts. Shut up, Jordan Klein. Just produce the show and be quiet. Shut up and dribble. How about that? No, I can't say that to you. I think I can. I love you. Okay, we continue on. Let's talk tools and content first before we go to the next one. 3 up, 3 down. We're making good time here after the schmooze fest that was talking Adam Scherr at the top of the show. Blech. Congrats on your 115K. Nobody else is seeing any of that money. Well, actually, no. There's a lot of people who are going to see that money.
Yeah, I ultimately probably won't.
No, you will not. But still, tools and content. If you guys want to make money the appropriate manner and, save it, turn it into something, we need to get you a money manager, I think is the key, Adam. I think you need to talk to a guy.
Yeah, Josh and I were talking about that the other day. I need Marvin from Entourage.
Oh, well, you guys all need to Stokastic plus tools and content. MLB DD, all caps, one word. That's what you guys put in. Gets you 50% off your first week of Stokastic plus platinum. That's not just MLB, where we have the best tools and content, no doubt about it. The top pitchers tool, top stacks tool, top batters tool, which is awesome as well. Plus the best projections, ownership projections, and things of the sort. But MMA, I mean, we got Adam on the show. This dum-dum can win MMA tournaments with the help of our tools and content. I promise you can too. How about that? And then golf, some of the best stuff you could possibly find. So stop guessing, start winning. Join us at Stokastic, but do it right now to get 50% off your first week with promo code MLBDD. Tell them Eric sent you. The water's warm here. You'll enjoy. All right, we got more games to get to. Next up on the docket, the Detroit Tigers. Go Tigers. Going up against the Twins. Tariq Skubal. No Buxton in the lineup. The guy, I got to imagine you want to get out of Detroit unless you're Eminem or Jack White. I think he's from Detroit too. Whatever.
He is. He is, but I didn't hear what that had to do with Buxton.
Well, it has to do with Skubal. Buxton's out of the lineup. And Skubal, if you're smart, you want to get out of Detroit. You want to go play for a contender this year. You want to go get paid that to me on his monies. Same thing. We're trying to get it done. And Skubal, I like him today. Maybe that seems a little strange. I mean, 13.9% ownership. I am happy to go overweight to that. It's a Minnesota team that, Buxton, at the same time that he is very, very potent, he strikes out a lot. And now you add, Nick Gordon's still a 26.2% strikeout rate. I feel pretty good about Skubal. How do you feel about him?
I think he's a good play. Buxton being out of the lineup certainly makes it less potent. Skubal's projected for about 14% ownership right now on DraftKings, about a 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. He's got good strikeout stuff. It's just that the matchup against Minnesota is still dangerous. Polanco, Correa, those guys are still good. Arias is tough to strike out. Miranda's a top, a good hitting prospect. Garlick has some power, but it is a little bit of a watered down lineup here for Minnesota. So that makes it look a little bit better. And I already had some interest in him just because this slate, the pitching's really weird. You have a few guys that are pulling a lot of ownership, deservedly so. And then you have a bunch of guys that are either talented like Skubal in a relatively difficult matchup, or not very talented and just not somebody that I really want to play, like Cal Quantrill. So I still think that he makes sense in tournaments. I do think that it's more so like when you look on DraftKings in that 8 to 9K price range, you have Skubal at 8K, you have Clevenger at 8,300 against the Rockies, you have Garcia at 8,600 against Boston. I kind of think it's Garcia and Clevenger are the guys where, like, in most lineups, if you have a relatively contrarian stack or something like that, and you're just kind of trying to round out your lineups with the highest projection you can, I think you're getting to Garcia, Clevenger. Skubal's the guy that fits in more so, I think, when you're getting to more popular teams like maybe the Mets or I don't know, like a Cleveland stack with Ramirez. I don't have another good example off the top of my head, but I think the point remains that Skubal's upside is certainly still there, but he does project kind of a step behind Garcia and Clevenger.
I agree, but I think that there's room to get to a lot of those guys and pepper that range and avoid trying to get too thin. Like you talked about Domingo Ramon. I can't do Ramon. I'm probably not going to be ending up there as much, but it's not like I'm going to roster anybody else really in this range outside of like, I don't know. I can't even think of somebody that I want to roster. Michael Kopech a little bit maybe, but more expensive. This is just the range that you're going to end up on. Garcia, Clevenger, Skubal, and he's the only one that's coming in with any kind of reduced ownership. So I think that's kind of what gets me on Skubal. It's not that I like him more than Garcia, Clevenger, but I don't know how else to get contrarian at pitcher.
Yeah, exactly. And in general, I do think this is a slate where I haven't made lineups yet, so maybe I'm wrong, but I would expect that I am just kind of chalky at pitcher and then being a little bit more contrarian with bats. Again, I haven't made lineups, but I kind of just, that's how I see this slate. But Skubal is still at least a strong enough projection, a strong enough value that I think I'll get to him. It's just that probably less than Garcia or Clevenger.
All right. And then we look at the twin side here. Oh, man, just Devin Smeltzer. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
It's
Aaron Sanchez now? Okay. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It was Aaron Sanchez last night when I did the leans, likes, locks, and then I saw Smeltzer, and then I saw back to Sanchez. Why are we doing this to ourselves? He was terrible in his 3 starts at Washington. He gets a AAA contract, has over a 6 xFIP at the AAA level this season. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, he's been bad. This is somebody that was supposed to be a good pitcher, and then in Toronto, even though he never really got to his ceiling, he was still at least competent, but he seems to have lost all signs of that. You know, you mentioned it, 8 starts at AAA for Minnesota this year, 38 innings pitched, only striking out about 15.9% of hitters, close to a 6 xFIP. He's not very good. And obviously the Tigers aren't very good either. They don't have Javi Baez in the lineup. They don't have Eric Haas in the lineup. So a couple of the guys that typically, if you're going to make a case for a Detroit stack, you do mention having power, are not in this lineup. But still, we had Detroit with like a really high top stack percentage this morning. But then once the line updated for Sanchez, it went back to being normal. 5% top stack percentage, 6.5% ownership share. All that's fine. But what really stands out is the 23.5% chance of being the top value stack, because this team is essentially free. Riley Green is $4,100. Candelario is $3,200. There's not another player in the lineup above $2,500. The bottom 3 guys are all 2K flat, including Akil Baddoo hitting 9th, who does have some power. Obviously, a unappealing lineup spot, but this team is really, really cheap. So if you're, too scared to play Domingo Germán like Eric is, then the Tigers maybe are a team that's going to help you play the pitchers that make you feel nice and safe, like Max Scherzer.
See, now we're building that rapport. When you can start giving me shit back, because like what it normally is you're like, oh, I'm not listening. But here's the thing. I know you like me more than Josh. I know you like doing shows with me more than Josh. You know why? Because you give it back. And that means you're listening.
I mean, if you're going on that scale, I definitely talk more shit to Josh than anybody.
Yeah, well, he deserves it. So I guess it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the argument that his is more deserved, and that's why it happens. But
Eric calling out the rapport building takes away from the rapport. Jordan Klein. God. What a butthole Jenkins you are. Just what a butthole. Minnesota side. Again, I like the Detroit side too. I think I'm with you. I don't really know where I'm going to land.
Yeah, like's not the word I would use. I like
them above what the field does.
I like the lineups that I like the players I can put in a lineup around Detroit and then just pray that like Detroit doesn't totally suck.
But here's the thing. Aaron Sanchez at AAA. Like, let's just imagine we're playing baseball at the AAA level, St. Paul. If you have nearly a 6 xFIP at that level against those hitters, as bad as we look at the Detroit lineup, I can't imagine that somehow this Detroit lineup is worse than any team visiting AAA St. Paul.
Sure, yeah. That's the Orioles AAA team is probably better than the Tigers, but other than that,
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean that's completely true. Like we talk about the Tigers being really, really bad in the context of Major League Baseball teams.
Correct.
They're still Major League Baseball players, and at least most of them. So it's still there's no reason to think that Sanchez, who could not get guys out at AAA, is going to have success here because he's facing the Tigers, just because they're the worst team in the majors. They're still better than AAA.
Correct. Let's talk Twins. My team, the home team, the God's team, even though we didn't get Frankie Montas or Luis Castillo, we're just not going to have a starting pitcher. We're going to have to put out guys like Aaron Sanchez on the mound every 5th day because that seems like a good idea, guys. Whatever. Let's talk our lineup that actually does things.
Oh, that's who else was. I knew there's somebody else missing from the Tigers. Grossman also missing.
Yeah, Robbie Grossman. Because you know why? They're all getting traded tomorrow.
Seems like it would make sense.
Yeah, why would you put them out there to get hurt? And remove the only thing that Detroit's trying to do, and that's win the draft lottery. Like the lottery of, hey, maybe these guys that we've never heard of will pan out.
Who else? Speaking of which, who else is missing from Baltimore's lineup?
Baltimore. So well, I'll take a look at it here as you talk about the Minnesota Twins here. Once again, flat leverage. They aren't one of the popular teams, but you take Buxton out, the lineup becomes a little bit cheaper, so that's serviceable. But in the audition game for Scooball, what are you planning to do with the Minnesota Twins?
Oh, Hayes is missing. I don't think they're trading him.
They're not.
Yeah. For the Twins, I think that it's kind of an interesting spot because I have a lot of respect for Scooble, not only from the strikeout standpoint, but he has done a better job limiting power so far this year as well. This year, 142 expected ISO to right-handed hitters. If you go back to the start of last season, he has an identical 26.4% strikeout percentage against righties, but a 218 expected ISO over that larger sample. So there is some chance that it's just kind of been fluky and that's going to turn around. There's also a pretty decent chance that a pitcher as talented as Scooble just is doing a better job of limiting power, and that's going to continue. But when you talk about a team like Minnesota, there is still power there. I was more interested in them this morning when I expected them to have Buxton, but still, Polanco, Correa, Miranda, Garlick, even though I assume he'll be pinch hit for once you get into the bullpen, Urshela or Sanchez, it's still a decent stack, but I'm not as interested in the Twins now as I was this morning.
I'm right there with you. Anything else from this game feels pretty simple.
Nope.
A little bit of both teams stacking them up. Scooball, I'm going to be over the field, but that's about it. Let's talk Odd Shopper, my friends, and oddshopper.com, the presenting sponsor here of the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. It's the easiest place that you can go to get everything you could possibly need for your bets on a day in, day out basis in MLB. Also, NBA and NHL when those get back. Golf bets getting updated daily as well. But legitimately, just put your email in, sign up over at Odd Shopper, and get access to the best tools and content from some of the best players in the DFS industry now, putting together the best cards you possibly can imagine over on the MLB streets. All you have to do is click on Shop Bets MLB, you log in, and you have access to positive expected ROIs and expected win percentage bets. If you're playing on Prize Picks, like I do all the time, doing my videos over at the Odd Shopper channel constantly for them, make sure that you're paying attention to the expected win percentage, because something like Spencer Watkins, a 3.5 line under of that, 63% expected win percentage, 33% ROI. That's great. You go over to John Gray, though, the under 6.5, 57%. Not nearly as interesting from an expected win percentage, but still a 27% expected ROI at plus 124 and the under 6.5 has the book directly there where the best bet is available. So head to oddshopper.com right now. Really pay attention to some of those numbers as well as the home run numbers. We got Lewin Diaz, Jake Myers making the lineup here with the Alex Bregman scratch. Lots of great spots on the MLB board today with great expected ROIs. Take advantage of a few of those bets. Sign up for all of the great promos at like BetMGM. We have that going with a risk-free bet right now. That link should be in the video description box below. If you sign up over at BetMGM or places like DraftKings, FanDuel, anywhere you guys want to sign up, make sure you're getting access to be able to shop for the best lines day in, day out. That's how you end up being a profitable bettor. So check out those tools. Stop guessing, start winning. Join us at Stokastic, but do it over on the Odd Shopper channel, oddshopper.com. Enjoy, everybody. All right, we've got 5 games to go. Baltimore, the Mancini-less, Hayes-less. Baltimore Orioles going up against the Texas Rangers. 7.5 total runs here, and I don't know really what to say. John Gray's pretty good at pitching baseballs. He's going to be a guy that I land on again today here. Looks like the field is going to get to a little bit more, 31%. I'm right now around 25% of my last run. Maybe that comes up a little bit. He is 9,700 for DraftKings purposes, but how do you kind of look at him going up against this Orioles lineup that, no doubt about it, looks worse than it did 2 days ago?
Yeah, I think Gray looks really good here. There's a little bit of sticker shock because he's 9,700 on DraftKings and he hadn't been that expensive, but it's pretty hard to say he doesn't deserve it on this slate. He has, again, not including Heaney, he has the second highest strikeout percentage, only trailing Scherzer at 27%, 3.32 xFIP, and the matchup is not bad because you don't have Hayes and now you don't have Mancini either. So instead of having, those top 6 guys that are pretty good and then the Urias, Mateo, whoever I'm blanking on bottom of the order. Now it's
just your baseball team and you're forgetting names. You're not a real fan.
Yeah, Odor.
Not a real fan. No, you're just a faker. It's a pretender. You're fine.
Now you have Odor batting fifth. Orioles is sixth. He's fine. Terran Valvera up from AAA is hitting seventh. McKenna's horrible at hitting. Mateo is not a particularly good hitter either. So it's a really, really weak bottom of this order once you get past the Mullins, Rutschman, Santander, Mountcastle part of the lineup. There's also the non-zero chance that Santander is not on this team by the end of the game, although you're clearly not factoring that in. It's just a thing that could break in John Gray's favor. It looks like a really good spot to get to him.
I can't take anything you just said seriously. You don't even know your own team. You're supposed to be an MLB analyst, Adam Scherer.
Wow, even EMAC is just talking shit in chat right now.
It's okay. Runs a model, duplicates lineups, and wins. Hashtag where's the skill? Well, it's not in naming players on your own baseball team. Who's the top prospect that the Orioles haven't called up yet?
Gunnar Henderson.
There you go. All right.
I mean, it's technically
Gunnar.
Grayson Rodriguez. But
no, it's not.
I think Gunnar Henderson's the best prospect in baseball, but by
You're
ranking,
also a psychopath who doesn't even know his own team.
Yeah, but by ranking, it's Rodriguez.
All right, let's talk Texas everything here because that's going to be far more pressing. You don't have any Orioles exposure, right?
I wouldn't expect to. Haven't made lineups, but I'd be pretty surprised, especially because the pricing here is really tough. Normally, when you get to Baltimore, it's like, oh, well, normally they have 6 guys that are good at hitting and not 4. But it's also typically that they're just not very expensive and they're not popular. Mullins, 5,300, Rutschman, 5,500, Santander, 4,900. It's really tough for me to say I want to stack Baltimore against John Gray if I'm not even going to be able to save money and build a really good lineup around it.
It's true. Texas Rangers, you can. You know why? Spencer Watkins is trash and he's still in the big leagues, and I don't understand it. His 13.8% K rate is 479 expected slugging, 41.5% hard hit percentage. Here's the thing. I talk about this a lot on the Odd Chopper channel, on Lindy's Leans, Likes, Locks, when we're talking betting. And the Texas Rangers, Marcus Semien has started to actually have a pulse, and that's actually changed the prospects of this lineup top to bottom. You have Cole Calhoun, who's regressed a little bit, but still has been serviceable. Tavares, they're overall 107 WRC plus since June 1st. That is drastically better than their 94 WRC plus under all circumstances. And now they're getting the easiest matchup out of anybody on the board. I don't love the ballpark, but I love the opportunity to go against one Spencer with an S Watkins. How do you feel about a chalky Texas Rangers team that is crazy owned today?
13 starts this year for Spencer Watkins. How many times do you think he's given up more than 3 runs?
Out of 13?
Yeah.
10.
1.
What? Stop it.
1.
I was just being sarcastic a little bit with 10. That was a misleading. Leading the witness.
Well, I led you the other direction. You just.
I know. You're twat. But what? 1?
1.
1?
1.
1. We're going for 1. Name that movie.
Yeah. So, and I talked about it with Josh this morning. It's not that you're taking that information and saying, oh, Texas isn't a good play, but Watkins has actually been okay. Better than I think his talent level suggests this year, particularly against left-handed hitters. He's held them to an ISO below 100, 124 expected ISO, still only a 14% strikeout percentage. Righties have done more damage, 365 expected WOBA, 255 expected ISO, predominantly left-handed lineup for Texas. I think Semien and Garcia look very good individually, and I'm not saying not to play, Seager, Heim, Lowe, Calhoun, just because they're left-handed. They're still good hitters, and I agree this is a good spot for Texas, but I do think Watkins may be a little bit better than he gets credit for, partly because Baltimore's just done such a good job recently of taking below average pitchers and making them mediocre and taking mediocre pitchers and making them good. They are one of the most advanced teams in baseball in terms of analytics, and they've consistently been able to get better results than they should from guys, based on their talent levels. So that combined with a good bullpen behind them, I think would be the two cases to be made against Texas. But still, you're talking about, you still have to compare them to everyone else on the slate. Just because I'm saying I think Spencer Watkins may be a little bit better than projection systems give him credit for, I still think he's one of the worst pitchers on the slate, and Texas is still in a good spot.
Cool. Yeah, but you got to be pretty specific what you're doing with that lineup, I think.
Yeah. So I again, I think Garcia and Semien both look really good. Right-handed power, that's really what's gotten to him this year. But the pricing is nice too. Seager at 4,600, Lowe hitting cleanup at 3,300. Jonah Heim's a solid catcher option. So the combination of value and upside, I think, looks good. I'm kind of surprised we only have them with a 4% chance of being the top stack and a 3% chance of being the top value stack. But or now it's 5-4. But I do think there's
Wait,
plenty of good plays from the Rangers.
wait, what? They were way more popular a second ago.
We have them with
Okay, no,
5%
five
chance.
point, yeah, that's the negative leverage attached. Yeah, because Mets and Yankees are just, I don't know. It's going back and forth with EMAC. Those teams are just, they stand out on this slate, but Texas, I think, does too. It's just, I get it. They're really popular compared to what they should be. I mean, a lot of it just has to do, why did they build the worst ballpark for offense? I hate this place.
Yeah, it's not great.
I mean, it's not that bad, but it's also not good. And that's a problem because Arlington, the old Arlington Park was a blast. I loved that place.
Yeah, I always liked it when you had like a core slate because
Yep. You just played Texas.
yeah, exactly. Same with before they put the humidor in Chase Field. You get Chase and you'd get cores, and everybody would play cores, and it's like, yeah, okay, Chase is gonna do the same thing.
Yeah. That was just Nomar Mazara season.
Right.
Gone to right. Pop flies leaving the yard. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. 100 degrees. I don't know. You were talking about humidity and shit earlier. I really don't care. Let's talk Kansas City and the White Sox, shall we? Because we have a new pitcher on the mound, and he throws from the other side, which changes the analysis of the White Sox quite a bit, I would say. A 122 WRC plus against lefties. And hey, wouldn't you know it? Daniel Lynch now getting the start, activated off the 15-day IL while we were on this show. That is going to be different than Brad Keller for damn sure. How are you feeling about the White Sox bats now going up against him? Because I guarantee you have no Lynch exposure.
That's a weird thing to guarantee because I always have Lynch exposure.
Why are you the worst?
I mean, I don't want to. I'm just saying it happens a lot.
Okay. I'm worried about pitch count a little bit, but
yeah, I mean, I don't particularly want to get there. I'm not overly worried about pitch count. He pitched the 16th, so I don't know. I assume he's not going to have like a really long leash. I also think at 7,400, he's not a great player or anything. I was interested in the White Sox against Keller anyway. I don't think Keller is a great pitcher to target, but Lynch, I think, gives up even more than Keller does. So far this year against righties, he does have a 23.5% strikeout percentage, only a 148 expected ISO. So again, hasn't been a total gas can there. But you do have right-handed power for the White Sox: Tim Anderson, Andrew Vaughn, Abreu, Jimenez. Grandal's a switch hitter, so Moncada's a switch hitter as well. But they are kind of expensive, so I think it's another just sort of middle of the road stack for me when you factor in the price. And then we did project them to get a little bit more ownership now that Lynch is pitching.
yeah, this is one of the teams that always stands out to me in terms of splits. Because the White Sox going up against right-handed pitching on the season, a 94 WRC plus 122 ISO. I talked about it against lefties on the season, a 157 ISO, 122 WRC plus. Kind of changes the complexion of how I view the White Sox on today's slate just by switching the handedness. And, Daniel Lynch, Kansas City ruins guys like this. So that's cool. Yet another arm that they'll just run into the ground and won't be very good. But he's been better than last year, about the same sample size, 6.31 expected ERA, 4.49 expected ERA this season. So there are improvements. So I don't completely hate what you're seeing there, but the hard hits up. And this White Sox lineup should be able to do some damage, I would think.
Yeah, the pricing, I think, is the most difficult thing for the White Sox.
Yeah, you said that. I'm just being annoying. Let's talk Michael Kopech, because he's kind of annoying on this slate for me. He's lower owned. I was getting to a lot of him, more than I would have liked to get to Michael Kopech. We've seen that K percent just drop off precipitously as he's gone from a bullpen role where he was one of the best to a starter role where he's just been middle of the road in every single category. But he's 7K on today's slate. And if you're looking for savings, I think he stands out. How do you feel about Kopech?
I agree, especially because right now he's getting less than half the ownership of Herman. Kopech has been disappointing this year. I don't think there's any way around that. 21.4% strikeout percentage is pretty underwhelming when you have the stuff and the pedigree that Kopech does. 12% walk percentage is horrible. 4.96 xFIP is just obviously bad. But it's not like Domingo Herman is somebody that we're confident is any good either. He hasn't been great over the last couple of years when he has been able to pitch, and that hasn't been a ton. So I think that it's sort of, they should be closer in ownership. You also still don't have Bobby Witt for Kansas City. You do have Salvador Perez back. I feel like they're missing one other guy other than Benintendi, but I can't
I'll
figure out who it is.
Second.
But But it's basically
Rivera.
when you look at this lineup, the top four: Melendez, Merrifield, Perez, Pasquantino. Those are all guys that are solid. And then you get beyond that, and it's just not a very good lineup. So I don't really see any reason why Domingo Germán should be like much, much more popular than Michael Kopech.
All right. Well, Pasquantino stands out. I'll still get to a little bit of him. Kansas City guys. I mean, is Pasquantino the unluckiest hitter in baseball right now?
I don't know what he's been doing.
51.2% hard hit percentage, 470 expected slugging, and like nothing to show for it. He doesn't strike out either.
Yeah, I know his plate discipline numbers have been fantastic. And yeah, I just looked. So 92 plate appearances against right-handed pitching this year for Pasquantino since he was called up. 123 ISO and a 299 WOBA, just, awful numbers. 220 expected ISO, 370 expected WOBA. If he was just, hitting to those expected numbers with his plate discipline, his strikeout percentage and his walk percentage, we would just be talking about how this guy's a stud right out of the gate. So I'm playing Pasquantino pretty much every slate that he's min salary, and Kopech isn't very good anyway.
I've been playing him for a long time. Feel like his expected numbers are just eye-catching to me. Bring it up a lot. Thought I would bring it up now. Cool. We move on here?
Yeah, I mean, I'll expand that kind of quickly. So No Whit does water down the KC lineup a bit, and that's why even I like Kopech even a little bit more than I did this morning. But from a stack standpoint, KC is still a team I think you can get to, because in addition to Pasquantino, you have one of the best catcher options in Perez, one of the best second base options in Merrifield, one of the other best catcher options, but also an outfield option in Melendez, 1 through 4, and then you just suck it up and throw in Dozier or Taylor or somebody else from this team. So I do think there's some appeal to them as a stack. And right now they are getting some ownership. But especially if that were to come down a little bit, I'd have a little bit more interest.
All right, everybody, smash that like button so Josh doesn't give me shit in between shows. That would be nice, because I really don't want to talk to him, period. So make sure that I don't have to. That'd be great. So you're doing me a favor. You're doing yourself a favor too, because then we can keep making this great content. We move on to Boston, plus 155 at Houston, 7.5 total runs in this one, 4.3 implied for the Astros side. So that's kind of what's going on. And Ethan Eovaldi, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Since coming off the IL, his 3 outings have been absolutely horrendous in every sense of the word. I don't even really know what to say about him at this point, because I think he's hurt. I don't think that would surprise anybody if you were to come out at the end of the season, be just like, hey, I'm pitching hurt and that's the end of it. But how do you feel about Eovaldi on today's slate?
I have a lot of trouble getting to him. The matchup clearly sucks with Houston. There is no Alex Bregman in the lineup because, unfortunately, I thought maybe, I mean, not really, but he was scratched from the lineup like right after they announced the Mancini trade. So I was like, I don't know, maybe they just did Mike Elias a favor from years ago. But no, his wife's in. His wife is in labor, so no Alex Bregman in the lineup, but you still have a very good lineup. You still have Alvarez, you still have Altuve, Kyle Tucker's a monster, Pena is good. But Eovaldi also, I don't want to read too much into it, because a lot of times you just see random blips, but since returning from the injured list, Eovaldi's average fastball velocity is down about 2 miles per hour from his season average, and this is a pitcher that he's been very good this year. He has a 3.3 xFIP. He struck out 23% of hitters, but he's had home run issues all year long. He's allowed 2 home runs per 9 innings. Now you have him not throwing as hard. Over those 3 starts, he's just not getting strikeouts. Granted, they were difficult matchups, but it's a situation where I already think it's a really difficult spot for Eovaldi and a really high upside spot for the Astros. And then you add in, there's a whatever percent chance that he's pitching through some sort of injury that's making him lose effectiveness. And there's just even more volatility there, and even more reason, I think, to like the Astros in tournaments.
Yeah, I like the Astros a lot in tournaments. They're low owned, and I don't know why. I will say the nice thing, maybe for Eovaldi, is that you just get out of Fenway. It feels like his last 2 starts, Cleveland, Toronto, they were pretty darn favorable hitting conditions. But still, he was so bad that there aren't really words for it. I think the most concerning part, even more than the 3, 9, and 4 earned runs he's given up in those 3 games, that's 3 times more than Spencer Watkins has given up, I guess, on the year in outings. He's done it 3 in a row, just 3+ earned runs in each of those. But it's just 8 strikeouts in those 13 innings.
Yeah, and again, it was difficult matchups. I'm not saying like I think that you can just look at those starts and expect the same thing to happen here, but even if we, had no cause for concern on Eovaldi, I'd be saying I liked the spot in tournaments for the Astros. You add in that has happened, 3 games in a row where he's just been bad, and the fastball velocity has been down, and it just makes me even more interested in Houston.
All right, well, let's talk Luis Garcia because I'm interested in him. I'm sure you are too. This is a Red Sox lineup that does not have Devers still, continues to be out. There are some strikeout bats in the likes of Cordero and Dahlbeck. Jaron Duran, even 29.5%. Yolmer Sanchez, 29% in his small sample size so far. He's not good. JD Martinez is. Xander Bogaerts is. I don't really know what to do with Luis Garcia. I think I'm just going to play him at the field and move on with my day. But what do you plan to do?
I'm going to have plenty of Garcia here. I think he's a good play on DraftKings. I think he's a good play on FanDuel. The Red Sox lineup isn't very good right now. You don't have Trevor Story. You don't have Rafael Devers. So it's just kind of a league average to slightly below average offense. And Garcia is a good pitcher. He's struck out 26.5% of hitters this year, 3.62 xFIP. He has had some home run issues, allowing about 1.5 home runs per 9, but his expected power numbers are actually better than what he's allowed. He's given up a 201 ISO to lefties, only a 149 expected ISO, so should see some regression there. And similarly with righties, 176 actual ISO, 165 expected ISO, so not as big of a gap, but still a little bit of a gap there. So he looks good. And then the other thing with Garcia is normally when we talk about him, it can be kind of tough to get to him because you'll get him on slates where there are like several other top end pitchers, and Garcia just typically doesn't get the same sort of leash that a lot of those other guys in his price range do, but they don't really exist today. Like you have Scherzer, you have Gray, they're even more expensive than he is. You know, Gray's 1,100 more on DraftKings, Scherzer's even more than that. So you don't even really have the same sort of concerns about pitch count on Garcia that you typically do because he's at a very favorable price point as well.
I love that note. Love that note. Boston, no bats for you?
Probably
Maybe.
not. I mean, Duran's cheap at 3K, JD's good and 4,300, but I wouldn't anticipate getting into too much Boston.
And you talked about Houston a little bit, but if you want to expand on anything, because Jordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker sub 10%, give me all of that you got in a bag of potato chips.
Yeah, I don't remember if I specifically mentioned it when I said I liked Houston, but their pricing is really favorable as well. A lot of times when we talk about Houston, it's in the context of, they're not getting much ownership. They're a really high upside offense, but they're difficult to afford. Today, Alvarez is 6,200, fully deserved. Altuve is 5,400, which is whatever. Kyle Tucker at 4,400 is a really favorable price tag. Aledmus Diaz batting cleanup at 3,400. Not the greatest hitter or anything, but 3,400 for a guy with second base outfield eligibility. Gurriel, same kind of thing. Not the most dangerous hitter, but he's hitting second at 3,300. Pena, 4,500 is reasonable for him too. So this is the cheapest as a whole that I can remember being able to get an Astros stack in a while.
All right. Well, we move on. We're going to do 2 games pretty darn quickly because we got Colorado, San Diego, talking more pitchers. And of course, hit that like button. You guys know what to do. It's Mike Clevinger, Antonio Senzatella. Well, this saves time. We don't have to roster Senzatella. So Mike Clevinger, really, really popular. He goes in that Luis Castillo bucket. He goes in that Tariq Skubal bucket. How do you compare him to these other low 8K guys?
I think he's comparable to Garcia. I think he's a little bit behind Garcia, but it is a decent matchup against the Rockies. Not the most strikeouts in this lineup, but they still are just really unproductive outside of Colorado. Clevinger is a good enough pitcher, 24% strikeout percentage, 3.86 xFIP, $8,300 price tag is fine. He's just one of the handful of pitchers that I expect to be building most of my lineups around.
All right. And then we go to the Senzatella side where giving up north of a 6 ERA on the road. Why is he so much better on the road than he is at home? This is the most ridiculous.
The other way around?
Senzatella, no. Am I
you asked why he's better on the road than at home.
No, he's better at home. Why?
Right,
why
that's
in the
what I'm
world
saying.
is he better at home? It's the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, I was saying
you
ordered it backwards.
Oh, well, I'm a fucking idiot. So that's confirmed. But 4.02 ERA at home, which is Coors Field. Think about that. And a 6.57 ERA on the road. What a broken human being.
Yeah, I mean, I don't read into that too much just because it makes absolutely no sense. But he's just a pitcher that, I don't know, he has a 4.14 xFIP overall this year, but he doesn't strike guys out, doesn't give up a lot of power. The Padres are sort of just a middle of the road stack to me. 4.5 implied run total is kind of whatever. I do think individually there's some guys you can get to here. Machado at 4,900. Senzatella has been much more prone to right-handed power than left-handed power this year. 204 actual ISO, 185 expected ISO, compared to 114 and 116 respectively against lefties. So I think that makes Machado look pretty good. Luke Voigt obviously has some power at 3,600. We have Will Myers back at 2,500. And then Cronenworth, left-handed, but 4,300 at second base is a reasonable salary as well. I don't anticipate getting a lot of full Padres stacks, but I think, mini stacks where you're going like Machado, Cronenworth, Myers, or some combination like that do make some sense here.
Anything from Colorado?
No.
Yeah, I can't find it. Also, going to be tough to find offense in this one. Not a single bat over 6.5%. That is Trey Turner at the top end here in the nightcap. Dodgers, Giants. Going to be fun to watch from a real life perspective. Maybe not so much from a fantasy perspective, unless Andrew Heaney, 9,500. You guys got a sub 0.5 ERA in a very limited sample size so far this season. The Dodgers do this all the time with starting pitchers. They make them the best versions of themselves. Well, apparently Andrew Heaney's going to strike out the world now, along with to have a low whip, and he's just really, really good so far in 4 starts. Do you think he can keep it going against San Francisco? And is he viable at 9,500, pulling 12%?
To me, he's an okay play if you're playing a lot of lineups. He's not somebody I'd really want to play if you're playing limited lineups. Yeah. I still don't expect him to go particularly deep into this game. He does have very good strikeout stuff. It is a good park for pitching, and it's not a particularly strong pitcher slate. So it's not that difficult to see how, even with limitations, how Heaney can still end up being a good option. Like if Garcia just ends up being mediocre and Clevenger's mediocre and Heaney manages to strike out like 8 in 5 innings or something and get a win, you can still want him. So I think getting to him, if you're playing a lot of lineups, makes sense. But I think I would rather just be going to those other guys if I'm playing limited lineups, because he threw 71 pitches last time out. I would expect that he's allowed to throw a bit more here, but I also wouldn't expect him to be going to like 100 pitches or anything. But the other thing that concerns me is just Dave Roberts' track record of handling pitching. Like, I think there's a decent chance that they go into this game and they're like, okay, Heaney's allowed to throw 85 pitches, let's say, but then he's through 5 innings on 74, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, you're done anyway.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the ceiling is so capped at 9,500, but basically by rostering him, somebody's got to kind of fail in that 8K range, right? And you just kind of surpass them that way.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have that same top end to his range of outcomes that other pitchers do, but it's a weak enough pitching slate where, would it shock anybody if like Garcia, Gray, Clevenger, Skubal all score something like 14 or 15 points and Heaney scores 18?
Yep. That's kind of the reason that you would get there. And we talk about San Francisco on the other side to round it out. Logan Webb on the mound for them. Really tough matchup. 4.3 implied runs isn't nothing in San Francisco here for the Dodgers. But if you're making, if you're making like 3 main lineups and you're like, I have to have some side of this game, would you rather roster Logan Webb or would you rather roster a Dodgers stack?
I'd rather roster a Dodgers stack. I don't think I end up getting to much of either one. The Dodgers are one of the most under-owned teams looking at the top stacks tool for both DraftKings and FanDuel. They're projected around 7% chances of being the top stack with 2 to 3% ownership. But they're also just so hard to get to from a value standpoint, at least when you talk about the hitters that you really want. When you have Betts at 6K, Turner at 61, Freeman at 59, and Smith at 53, yes, you can balance that out with a $2,800 Jake Lamb or a $3,600 Bellinger or a 2K flat James Outman batting ninth. But even Lux and Muncy are not super cheap. So it's not a good park for power either. So I think it's a team where, yes, they are going under-owned, but you also have to keep in mind that you're constructing the entire lineup. And if you're going to the Dodgers, not only are you paying to get them against a good pitcher in a tough park to hit, but you're probably then also sacrificing pitching and or one-offs around them. I think there's a good chance that even though I like the idea of getting to them at no ownership, that the lineups I make with them just end up grading out as weaker than I would like and that I don't get to a lot.
All right. Well, guys, that was the MLB Deeper Dive. Adam Scher, great job breaking everything down. Glad he was sober today. I was going to say, that was kind of the most, I don't know if I'm disappointed or if that's awesome. I don't really know. I was expecting you to have like a 48-hour hangover.
I don't know. I was never even like truly drunk the entire time I was in Dallas.
You just pick like a random Tuesday during the NBA season to go out and let it rip?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you need to catch me on the day that my air conditioning is broken and I go to the bar that has good AC in the afternoon.
It's too good. You could own that bar now, that's for sure. Thank you so much to Jordan Klein. Shout out to my guy doing great work behind the virtual glass. Hit that like button as we make way for the dudes. That is Josh Engelman, Greg Ehrenberg coming up next on the Live Before Lock show. He's Adam. He's really cool and funny, and you guys like him. I'm Eric. I'm somewhere not those things. We'll see you guys later.
What's
Best
going
of luck
on,
tonight.
everybody? Eric Lindquist here at Stokastic on the Odd Shopper channel, coming to you with another edition of Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed Eitan Shander over the weekend. He's going to be doing that duty going forward for the rest of MLB season, but I'm happy to be here on a lovely Monday covering 10 MLB games. But first, I got to tell you guys, we have a new promotion going with BetMGM, and it might be even a little bit better than the last one. I didn't think that was possible, but here's why. You get $1,000. You can get up to a $1,000 risk-free bet. So if you are looking at doing this seriously, if you take sports betting very seriously, you have an opportunity to get yourself $1,000 free bet no matter what. It will get reimbursed in BetMGM credit if it loses whatsoever. You can't do like some crazy parlay. You can't do a bunch of other things where it's like you can't play like a minus 350 favorite and try to squeeze something out of that, I believe. But there's a lot of ways to be very, very profitable and have this work for you. Basically, if you have an even money bet and it's a 50-50 coin flip, you could make $1,000 on your 1,000 and have $2,000 to start your bankroll with over at BetMGM. And hey, if you guys just want to deposit $10 and play $10 over there, you have that opportunity too. I wanted to tell you guys about that right from the get-go so we can talk a lot of baseball today. I'll remind you guys at some point to use promo code Lindy over there at BetMGM at some point. But hey, you guys are here for picks. Let's get to them. First up, we've got the Reds and Marlins, the object of my eye, Hunter Green. So beautiful. Facing what is assumed to be Jesus Luzardo here, who would be making his first start since May 10th. He threw 75 pitches of no-hit ball in his last start at AAA Jacksonville, and this Cincinnati lineup could look
I would have got the IV that I got in Dallas and in Chicago.
Works miracles.
And we are live. Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock. It is Monday, August 1st. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by Odd Shopper. 9 games to go through. Tons of stuff to talk about over the next 55 minutes. God bless the Deeper Dive crew for running long because it's just always a better deal for Live Before Lock. Hit that like button so we can get up over 200 likes. We've got 900 people in here right now. I expect us to be over 1,000 shortly. Greg, how are you? How was your weekend?
Yeah, not as fun as yours because you were at the UFC event this weekend. I was at home watching the UFC event, but it was fun. I enjoyed it a lot. In terms of my DFS slate, it was a total wash, unlike Adam's, because I had over a course of 150 lineups. I believe I lost $11 on it. So totally neutral slate, unlike Adam, who shipped the live final, came in first place, tied for first, which is obviously a nice payout. I think it was 110 grand, if I'm not mistaken. So that was cool. You were there. Apparently got to go in the octagons. I had a good weekend, but not as eventful as yours.
Yeah, it was good. I got creamed in DFS, as did every other 150 maxer. Of the 83 150 maxers in the big GPP, one made profit, and it was like $130.
Yeah,
Rough.
it was a weird slate.
I had a live one. I needed Lewis, and then I was probably the odds-on favorite to ship that contest, and obviously that went a different direction almost immediately. I was like, all right, I'm focused. Here we go. And then like the wind was out of my sail before I even got my sail up.
Over.
Yep.
And then it's over. It's funny too, because I'm watching with my brothers. Our feed cut out for, I want to say 10 seconds. And all of a sudden, Derek Lewis was falling down face first and the fight was stopped. So I imagine from your perspective, you're not happy with the stoppage.
I thought it was early, but justified.
I also don't think it would have changed the outcome of the fight. I think it would have made it more definitive in terms of some people like, oh, he could have kept fighting. Sure, he could have physically taken more damage, but it wouldn't have mattered. He fell face first after getting hit a bunch of times.
Yeah, I have no, like, I think it was probably a punch or two before, like, it's a no doubt about it. Like, you got to get him out of there type stoppage. But the moment that he face planted, like, it's just, I can never be mad about a stoppage there, no matter what. I wanted it to continue, but I wasn't aggrieved even at the event when we like seeing it live too. It didn't look good.
Yeah. And just bad luck for Derek Lewis, who's from Texas. And I believe he's fought 4 or 5 times there and he's lost all of those fights via finish. So maybe fight outside your home place.
And Adam needed Pavlovich. So and we knew that like so he was still live, even if that didn't go that, like if it went the distance, like he could have just had enough losing points to still be okay. At least that's the way that I'm remembering it right now. But at the very least, I knew that like, because Pavlovich won, Adam was like pretty close to a lock to ship that at that point in time. So like I was still cool with that. I knew it was going to be like a fun night either way.
Yeah, there's weird takes. I've seen a lot of this where a GQ in the chat right now is saying the punches weren't connecting. He didn't fall face first on the canvas by himself. Yeah. It wasn't wind that knocked over a 265-pound Derek Lewis. It was punches that were landed by Pavlovich. Very, very clearly punches landing and Derek Lewis eating them with his face. Yeah. I promise. All right, so short on time now. We're 14 minutes in. We are going to zip through all 9 games because you have not talked about this slate yet. I will basically shut up for most of this, so I'm assuming most people will be pretty happy about that. So, are you ready? Yep, let's do it. Yankees and Mariners. Yankees big favorites in this one. Domingo Germán and Marco Gonzalez. No one rostering Marco Gonzalez. Domingo Germán in 15% of lineups. Is he a pay down option for you today? He would be if he wasn't picking up more ownership. So the good from Domingo Germán. He looked decent in his last start against the Mets. He was still on a pitch restriction. He ended up finishing with 16 DraftKings points. He actually generated swing and misses. But at the same time, too, he got lit up in his first start. He pitched, I think it was 21 minor league innings, ramping up to his start in the big leagues. And he only generated 10 strikeouts in those starts. And he's really cheap on DraftKings. I wouldn't consider him on FanDuel. For DraftKings, I get it. If somebody was rostering him as an SP2, I wouldn't say that it's a terrible decision. But at the same point, too, he's picking up a whole bunch of ownership. He is the most popular option that's priced below 8K. And I'm more apt to want to stack against him than roster him just based on the fact that nobody's rostering Seattle today. Domingo Germán has generally not pitched well this year outside of that one start where he was okay against the Mets last time out. And it's really an ownership play based on anything. We've got nearly 20% ownership going to Domingo Germán and 2% ownership going to the Mariners. And I'm just not really sold on Germán being a quality big league pitcher right now. From a bats perspective, we've got the Yankees 3rd in aggregate ownership, 2nd in our top stack tool. This is my most exposed stack for today. What are you doing with the Yankees against Marco Gonzalez? Yeah, so Marco Gonzalez, not only is he a mediocre pitcher, but this is the worst possible type of pitcher to go up against an offense that has the kind of firepower the Yankees have. Because the way that Marco Gonzalez finds some sort of success is he just pitches to contact, allows the hitters to make a whole lot of contact against him. Problematic when you're going up against the Yankees. Marco Gonzalez has a 12.4% strikeout rate this year. He also has a 7.5% walk rate. So he's not striking anybody out. He's walking a decent amount of guys. He might have a 3.66 ERA, but a 4.62 expected ERA, a 5.08 FIP. He doesn't have favorable projections, neither Zips nor Steamer moving forward. So I get the last couple of years, this has been a pitcher who's outperformed his peripheral stats, but his peripheral stats look much worse this year than they have in previous years. And just considering his pitching profile and the way he pitches to contact, it's just not ideal going up against an offense as potent as the Yankees. So I know you like the Yankees a whole bunch today, and I totally agree with you. I think there's a whole lot of reasons to like them as a primary stack.
Boom. Aaron Judge, most exposed hitter as of this moment. That's not all that surprising. He is also relatively chalky. Sometimes you're just going to get to some chalk, but got a bunch of Gleyber Torres, got like a bunch of basically everybody at double digits of every single hitter. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. I can't even count. 6 of the 9 hitters in the Yankees lineup, single digits in ownership. So I'm pretty happy with where I stand at this moment. You mentioned not a lot of people getting to the Mariners. I am one of the people that is getting to the Mariners. I have twice the field right now. They have about 3% aggregate ownership. I'm in the 6 range. Are you getting to Seattle on the opposite side of Herman?
Yeah, this is for contrarian purposes. It's not the stack that I have the most exposure to overall on the slate, but it's my favorite stack relative to ownership in large field tournaments, because I really do think there's a lot of upside going up against Domingo Germán. And I get it. This is an offense that's missing Julio Rodriguez, the best player on the team, the most talented player on the roster. But look at the limited numbers that we have on Domingo Germán. He's an 8.22 ERA and a 5.32 expected ERA this season. There's a little bit of a disagreement from Zips and Steamer. Zips has him being fairly miserable the rest of the season. Steamer has him being kind of mediocre. But there's also been a downward trend for him for each of the last few years. And then you also have to consider, at least to some extent, are struggles on the field tied to all the issues he's had off the field, where he was suspended for the 2020 season. He's also had the domestic violence issues, which have kept him suspended and had him pitch limited innings for a lot of his career at this point. He's pitched under 100 innings in all but one season in his big league career, and his strikeout rate has gone down every single season since he's gotten called up. So there was a point in time where he was one of the top pitching prospects in the Yankees organization, gets called up his first year, 29% K rate, and then in subsequent seasons, 27.2, 25.8, 23.9, 23.1 so far this year. It's all concerning when you just factor in all of the stuff he has off the field, the fact that he once retired on social media after, I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were. It was either him struggling at the time and then combination of his off-field stuff. But I have legitimate questions about how dedicated he is to baseball. And then you just see the overall drop in performance over time. And I get that when he pitched in the minor leagues this year, he didn't give up runs. But the fact that he pitched in AA, high A, and AAA and pitched 20 innings and only had 11 strikeouts, it's a little bit of a red flag for me. So I'm pretty comfortable stacking against him just when you consider what the ownership is in both sides of the game.
All righty. Anything else in this one?
No, not really. Aaron Judge is going to be one of the most popular bats on the slate. But if you were blindly playing Aaron Judge every game since the All-Star break, I think it's something like 10 home runs in his last 10 games or something. It's been working out in the long run. He's been ridiculous.
Yeah, he seems to be hitting well this season.
Yeah, the other day, I think it was the best individual game I've ever seen from a hitter or from a player. First inning, he robs a home run and then ends up homering when he comes up later. And then later on the game hits a go-ahead grand slam. So robs a home run, hits 2 home runs. One of them ends up being a go-ahead grand slam. He's been good. MVP.
Can't ask for much more there.
No, not at all.
All righty, let's go to game number 2. Nationals and Mets, Patrick Corbin, Max Scherzer. No one's really going to Corbin. Do you have any interest at all?
No, he's been absolutely miserable this year. The Mets have a really good offense. The only real question here is how much do we want to stack the Mets against Patrick Corbin? 6.49 ERA, 5.71 expected ERA. He's been getting lit up all season. One of the worst contracts in baseball. He's in the middle of a 6-year contract that pays him what happened.
Speaking of contracts, apparently Austin Riley just signed a 10-year, $212 million contract with the Braves.
All right. Actually, Atlanta has a couple of ridiculous contracts. So Acuna, because
he makes like $50 a year, right?
What's that?
Acuna and Albies both make about $50 a year.
Yeah, I think the team came out there, like they started negotiations by lowballing them. They just immediately said yes to the first offer because Acuna's contract, 10 years, $100 million. I'm going off the top of my head. I might be off by a little bit, but more or less I'm on the right page here. But yeah, Acuna's contract is 10 years, $100 million. And I think Acuna's is like Albies is like 7 years, $36 million.
Yeah, it was something preposterous. I felt like they snuck in like a different currency and then they signed it and they were like, hey man, you didn't read it.
Yeah, like, oh, no. This is Canadian money, but the conversion, this is what it ends up being. But yeah, so the Austin Riley contract, considering how good he's been this year, at the $20 million per year, he currently is the second best odds with the NL MVP, more than reasonable. So That's a team situated with a lot of team friendly contracts. And the Matt Olson one isn't bad this year either. But as for
Corbin.
so Patrick Corbin anyway. Patrick Corbin's contract, not good at 6 years, $140 million, and has been a below replacement level player over the last couple of years. And the Mets have also had a really good offense. So in terms of our top stacks tool, we actually have the Mets kind of under-owned here. 12% ownership share, 13% chance to be a top stack. I do wonder, though, in smaller field tournaments and single entry stuff, if the Mets are going to become way more popular than that.
They are currently my biggest fade. We can get to that in a quick second. We're going to be able to put this one to bed really quickly. Max Scherzer, most expensive pitcher on the slate. One of the highest owned pitchers as well. I mean, he's at like 26%, but in the grand scheme of things, the 4 most owned pitchers are sort of all the same. I assume you're getting to Scherzer.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me he's not more popular. We have Scherzer right now 27.9%, which, sure, that's not nothing, but Luis Garcia, John Gray, and Mike Clevenger are all projected for more ownership than Scherzer. When I was first eyeballing the slate this morning, just open up the app, look at the prices. I assume that on both DraftKings and FanDuel maybe a little bit less so because Scherzer's 11,500. But I just thought he was going to be the chalk today, and there are 3 pitchers that are more popular than him. So I think he's an easy pitcher to get overweight too.
I agree. I am quite a bit overweight. I think I have him in about 70% of my lineups right now. It just seems too easy to get to him. And it's not like I'm getting to the Yankees as well as my top stack. It hasn't been all that problematic to get to him. I think it's easier to just rotate my one-offs than anything else today.
I'm very curious to hear why you're not on the Mets. Is it just an ownership thing or something else?
To be honest with you, I don't really know. I don't have a single 5-man stack. I have 3.6% aggregate of the Mets right now. It's basically all coming in as one-offs. Let's see. When I ran them for my top stack, I ran them and they came in second. We obviously have them first, but I have a pretty big gap between those numbers. Mine's only 9.6%. Last I pulled for us, Mets were 12.9. So I see them as slightly over-owned. I'm okay with getting someone like the Lindor, Alonso guys. I think that'd be totally fine as, mini stacks and stuff, but I don't need to chase the 22% ownership on like JD Davis today. Although I understand why he's getting the ownership, clearly a great cash play. I think the issue here is that I think Corbin is solid and not like a gas can. Like he's not the total gas can that it seems. And I think that's probably what's nerfing it at least a little bit.
Maybe. I'm on the page of gas can. 6.49 ERA, 5.71 expected ERA this year. Last year, 5.82 ERA, 5.62 expected ERA. The year before that, 4.66 ERA, 5.13 expected ERA. So I'm on the page of he's the gas can, but I understand that not everybody's projecting him that way.
I'm surprised that the projection systems are as nice to him as they are.
Yeah. To me, and it's not just one, it's basically every single projection system other than the bat is kind of optimistic on Patrick Corbin moving forward. And because I know that you're not that I'm not mathematically inclined. I'm like in the 99th percentile of being a mathematically inclined person building MLB line. If you're like 99.9. And to me, I'm like, I don't buy in these Patrick Corbin projections. I think he's trash.
Yeah, I can't really wrap my head around it. It doesn't make sense. When I look at that doesn't make intuitive sense. If I just look back at the stats, his projected FIP is not what I would expect it to be from seeing what I'm seeing. So talk to me about the Mets then. Is this a team that you're getting to a lot? Are you getting them more than the Yankees?
Yeah, I do prefer the Mets to the Yankees because once again, I do rely on our top stacks tool a lot when I'm making decisions, just kind of comparing other teams on the board. And I just look at the numbers for Patrick Corbin for the season. I know how good the Mets are as an offense against left-handed pitching. And really the only thing I'm concerned about here is if I play the Mets in single entry, are they just all going to be like 30% owned? And I'm going to feel like an idiot and be like, I rostered a way too popular team. But at least as of now, they don't have ownership projected all that crazy high. And there are some individual Mets hitters that are picking up less ownership that I like to get to, like Eduardo Escobar, 4% owned, Marcana, 8% owned. So there are ways to build a lineup with Mets players that's not just like, well, I'm playing Marte, Alonso, Lindor, JD Davis, and just I have the most chalky lineup ever. There's other hitters in there that I think are quality players that do have more modest ownership.
Okay. Do you want to get to any of the Nats bats today?
No, it's that's going to be a no for me. I'm also slightly concerned that Juan Soto gets traded and gets pulled halfway through the game.
Wouldn't be shocking, that's for sure. Keep an eye on that, folks. I don't have a ton of Nats, so if I do have Soto in 1 or 2, I'll take my chances.
Yeah, it's trade deadline is tomorrow. There's going to be some weird things happening with players traded in games today. We see that all the time. The memes on Twitter with players hugging in the locker room. I actually took Juan Soto out of my player pool just because I do think he's that likely to get traded.
Let's see. Do I have him at all?
I mean, clearly it's not a great spot for him against Max Scherzer anyway. You know, if he hits 2 home runs and breaks the slate, so be it. But for me, I'm like, he's going up against Max Scherzer, and I think there's a fairly decent chance that he gets traded, and that's really hard to project for.
I have him in 2 lineups, so I'm gonna take my chances. All right, game number 3, Guardians and Diamondbacks. This is my second biggest stack, but we'll get to that in a second. Guardians, solid favorites. Cal Quantrill, Zach Davies. This is not a very good pitching matchup for DFS. I don't have these guys.
No, there's no reason to consider either, and they're both bad, and neither of them generate strikeouts.
There it is. Then let's move on to offense. Guardians 4th in top stack, 5th in ownership. Diamondbacks 7th in top stack, 6th in ownership. I like Cleveland here. Obviously, I like Jose Ramirez. Everybody does every single day. What are you doing with Cleveland?
Yeah, so I do think that overall they are a good source of salary savings. And while we have them as being overowned in the top stacks too, that can be a little bit skewed when it comes to Cleveland, because more often than not, that's very much driven by Jose Ramirez. And today, for instance, Ramirez is projected for 20% ownership. Jimenez is projected for 12%. Every other player in the lineup is Rosario is 11%. Everybody else is sub 10%. So on the aggregate, it looks like they're highly owned, but it's really heavily driven by Jose Ramirez. So it doesn't really impact how I view 5-man stacks of this team too much. So I'm fine making them as 5-man stacks. The only thing I would say about Zach Davies, his numbers are not terrible this year. He has a 3.94 ERA, a 3.81 expected ERA, but he has such a long track record of being a guy with poor peripheral stats that I tend to think he's going to be worse going forward. He's only pitched 80 innings this entire season, so it's a fairly small sample size. He's the situation with his wife, which I think is pretty funny. I presume that you don't know what I'm talking about.
No.
All right. So his wife posted on social media a little while ago that basically he cheated on her, and they'd been married for like 10 years or something like that. And he just never contacted her again. Just told, like, they have family, kids, pets, the whole deal, house together, left one day, never contacted her. Not a message, not an explanation, just ghosted her.
Wow. That's kind of hard to pull off.
Yeah, and I'm almost positive that they'd been dating since like high school or something.
Oof.
So I feel like we should get good karma for stacking against him, right?
You would think. Are you stacking
he's having his
for
best
him?
season he's had in a while.
Are you stacking the Diamondbacks?
So the Diamondbacks, I have a little bit less interest in. I don't think Cal Quantrill is good, but the Diamondbacks are also picking up ownership. And I feel like at some point I kind of have to pick and choose my spots a little bit. I can't just say I'm overweight to everybody. So considering that we right now have Arizona being a little bit overowned, this is one of the teams that I'm looking to cut exposure on. And Cal Quantrill, while certainly is not a good pitcher, and at least earlier in the day, I think the over-under for strikeouts for him was set at 4.5. I like the under on that mark. I don't think he's as bad as some of the other pitchers on the slate. Just there are some really bad pitchers, and the Diamondbacks offense isn't as good as some of the other offense that are going up against bad pitchers. So Arizona's a team for me to be underweight to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm about neutral. They're a non-entity, basically. Nobody that I really need to pay attention to. I have nothing else in this game. It's an easy one to talk about.
Yep, we can move on.
All right, we can move on, but first we got to move on to schedule for the rest of the day, and that would be absolutely nothing. There are no shows after this, so go back and watch all of our pre-recorded content and other videos that will be coming out, like my betting video on the Odd Shopper channel. Eric's betting video will be out shortly on the Odd Shopper channel. I'm sure there are plenty of other videos that are getting posted too, or have been posted today. Please go check out all of them. Do you have anything coming out tonight?
Not tonight. I have my betting video out right now. When this show finishes, if you guys want to go over there and leave a comment on it, get a chance to win a free subscription to our premium betting Discord channel. All you have to do is post what your favorite bet of the day is. If it wins, I go through them. I throw them in a spreadsheet, randomize it, and I give out a winner the next day. So if you guys want a chance to win free stuff, you can go check that out. It's just my video up on the Odd Chopper channel. You won't miss it. It's mine with my big face in the middle of it. So yeah, check out all the content. If you guys haven't subscribed to the Odd Chopper channel, go ahead and do that.
Plus, we've got the DK Night Owl tool free for today. New tool on the site, sort of getting all of our data in one big table so you don't have to bounce around the entire site trying to clean it up. So if you have any thoughts on it, please let us know. But that tool is free today. Check it out. I assume it's in the description of this video, or we'll get a link dropped into our chat. Game 4, Twins and Tigers. 4.4 for the Twins, 3.9 for the Tigers. Aaron Sanchez, Tariq Skubal. I don't think I have to ask you anything about Sanchez. Skubal, on the other hand, kind of a tough spot. Twins lineup is pretty good. Skubal 8K, 15% owned. Is today a Skubal day for you?
You know, in general, I like Skubal. He's got some good strikeout upside, but I think the field kind of has it right here. Then he's been crazy inconsistent this season. For the year, 3.67 ERA, 3.25 expected ERA, strikeout rate around 25%. So that's all well and good. But he's just been so all over the place lately. He had, just for instance, these are the strikeout numbers for his last 5 starts, 2.9571. This is a very inconsistent pitcher. He warrants being in some lineups if you're playing a bunch. If you're playing 1, 3, 5 lineups, there's no reason to consider him. If you got like 10% of him over the course of 150 lineups over on DK and a couple shares of him on FanDuel, that's all well and good. But in general, he's not a high priority for me today. There's other pitchers I prefer to get to, but I'm also not going to look to stack against him.
Teddy Wayman with the super chat. This is going to be a not helpful answer for you, but he said, "Hey guys, I've never played MLB. Was wondering what's the best spot to pay up for other than pitcher. Appreciate it, gents." If we're going to be technical here, there isn't one. It's like it's either your hitters or your pitchers. There's no like you should pay up at shortstop. You shouldn't pay up at second base. That's not a thing. So there is to me there is no answer to this question.
Yeah, so I'll make this easy. The answer is pitcher, right? You don't really need to look somewhere else. In general, in my lineups, that's the spot I pay up at most often. The pitchers I'm getting to the most today are Max Scherzer and Luis Garcia. There isn't generally going to be a thing where it's like, oh, I have to spend up at catcher. I have to spend up at shortstop or outfield. I guess outfield by default would be the next option just because it is the position that has the most pay up options. But just the way that salary generally breaks out on FanDuel and DraftKings, high-end starting pitchers, that is the safest thing you're going to find in MLB DFS. There's a lot of variance to it. Even if you don't consistently get, say, 30-plus fantasy points out of Max Scherzer in this spot, more often than not, you're getting at least a serviceable game out of him, and that can't be said for basically anybody else in MLB DFS at any position. So your answer there, Teddy, is just pitcher.
Yeah, like you're going to see more salary at outfield. You're going to see more salary at first base. It's the reverse of where you see the best defenders. Like you're just going to get the highest caliber offensive players being the highest priced guys. That is going to tend to congregate around positions where you get guys that are better at hitting and not as good at fielding.
Yeah,
that's all we got.
And it's also, it's not just there's a lot of variance with MLB DFS, but where we'll typically find the most value is just you'll find, oh, look, the Yankees have this random guy who's 2,300 that's batting 5th today. Not saying like any one. Let me actually pull up today's slate. Like who's a cheap hitter that I get to in lineups on DraftKings, for instance? Somebody like
I've got
Victor
one, Jarren
Reyes.
Duran.
Yeah, like a Jarren or Victor Reyes is nearly min price on DK in a decent matchup, batting second. So you get guys like that who it's like, what's the difference between Victor Reyes or any other outfielder that's priced at like 3,700? So just guys like that will end up being in like 20% of my lineups, and it makes it all that much easier to pay up for pitching.
All righty. Let's talk hitting. Actually, let's talk hitting in this one. Are you getting to the aggressive value of the Detroit Tigers today?
As one-offs, like I just mentioned, Victor Reyes is somebody that makes sense. In terms of 5-man stacks, though, not quite as much. And something else, too, is when we're just talking about pay-ups and salary and all that, the pricing has gotten so soft on DraftKings and FanDuel that there just isn't that much need to roster 5-man stacks of these crazy value stacks. So the Tigers are actually picking up ownership. Like I said, somebody like Victor Reyes, I think makes for a good one-off. but it's hard for me to reasonably make a bunch of 5-man Tiger stacks because I don't need the salary savings for anything.
Are you making any twin stacks? This is one of my bigger stands over the field for today, on the opposite side of a little bit of this Skubal ownership. I am getting to the Twins. I think there's enough power in this lineup, particularly from the right side, that they're worth a bit of a look-see. So they are currently, I just closed my workbook a little bit. This is my third most exposed stack for today.
Yeah, it's not a team that I am getting to. Scubal's been up and down all season. He goes on these weird stretches where, for instance, Skubal opened up the year. I think he had a stretch where he gave up 0 earned runs in something like 6 of 8 starts. And then he went through this stretch in the middle of July, end of June, where he got his ass kicked. Now he's also had back-to-back shutout starts. Not to say that this is anything that's predictive of anything, but in general, I do think that Skubal is better than not, and his aggregate numbers do indicate a good pitcher. So he's not somebody I'm rostering a whole ton, but I'm not stacking against him either. It's just a spot where I don't really have a whole lot of interest in either side.
Okay. Keep it moving then.
Let's move it on.
Rangers and Orioles. Rangers are the favorites here. John Gray on the hill for Texas. Spencer Watkins for the Orioles. Doesn't appear that anybody is getting to Watkins. Gray, on the other hand, highest owned pitcher today on DK at 9,700. I am getting to Gray. I am getting to Gray, though, significantly less than Scherzer, slightly below the field at this moment. I have no problem getting to Gray. My bigger issue is that I just prefer Garcia to Gray, and that's where my ownership is going a little bit more. And I think I heard you basically say the same thing.
It's crazy to me that we've got John Gray at a not all that dissimilar price for Max Scherzer. Scherzer, sure, he's $900 more expensive, but you know it's not like 10,600 versus 9,700 or something that's going to drastically change the outlook of an MLB lineup from a pricing perspective. And John Gray is more popular than Max Scherzer, so I'd much rather get to Max Scherzer. I think is much better than John Gray. And then same thing over on FanDuel. We've got John Gray picking up double the ownership of Max Scherzer. So on both sites, I don't think John Gray is unplayable. It does definitely help him that the Orioles are starting to trade away their team. Trey Mancini traded today to the Houston Astros for next to nothing, which is certainly something that's going to weaken the Orioles lineup, not just for today, but also moving forward. But that doesn't make John Gray a better option than Max Scherzer. And relative to the other options on the slate, I have more exposure to Scherzer. I have more exposure to Luis Garcia, underweight to the field on John Gray.
All righty. Then we'll take it over to the hitting side of this one. Texas is the 4th most owned team, 10th in top stack, 10th in top value. The Orioles are 16th in ownership against John Gray. I want to start on the Orioles side quickly. Is this a leverage spot for you, or are you staying away from Baltimore?
It would be easier if they weren't trading away their whole team right now. But the fact that they just traded away Trey Mancini and it's such a weakened lineup, I feel like I'm getting leverage just by not playing a whole bunch of John Gray and looking elsewhere. I don't think I need to double dip in this spot and also stack an Orioles team. That's just really not a good lineup now.
All righty. Then what about Texas here? 4th in ownership. Feels a tad high, but most of this, it's not really a team stack thing. Marcus Semien in the leadoff spot. He's pulling 20% ownership, but he's got a second base shortstop eligibility. He's 4,700. Corey Seager has shortstop eligibility at 4,600. These guys are pulling the ownership, and they should pull the ownership. You're getting the number 1 and number 2 hitters in their lineup with great positionality and great salary. So I'm not concerned with their ownership at all. The rest of it looks fine. Do you like Texas?
Not really, because still other guys in the lineup, like Jonah Heim is projected for 12% ownership. That's weird to me at the catcher spot. And then even some other guys, we got 8% ownership going to Adolis Garcia. Towards the end of the lineup, sure, there's guys like Josh Smith, who's not pulling any ownership. But on the whole, this is a weird team to be picking up the amount of ownership that they're getting. And I hear you, like Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. I get why they would be the most popular bats in the lineup, but I don't think they should be 21 and 20% owned. So this is a team I like being underweight to, because I do think a lot of the individual hitters are too popular, even if I don't think Spencer Watkins is good.
I have basically around the field, but it's flat. It's like more flat. So I'm getting a little bit more of these guys that aren't pulling the ownership, but I'm not getting to like 20% of Semien or 20% of Seager. It's basically like 8 to 9 across the board. So I am getting to Texas because even though Watkins hasn't given up monstrous days, I expect it to come sometime in the future.
By the way, trade news for people. Christian Vasquez traded to the Astros, so it looks like the Red Sox are starting to sell their players, which was kind of to be expected considering how poorly they've played since the break. Tommy Pham traded to the Reds, and it looks like, is Chris Bryant getting traded?
He got scratched. They keep saying that he's going to Atlanta, but I don't know. I was going to get to it once we got to the Rockies. I didn't really care, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about him being traded.
Yeah, same. All I saw was that he was scratched.
Injury, by the way. It's a foot injury.
Well, there you go. That makes a lot more sense, you know?
Who wants that terrible contract?
I don't even know what the contract is.
They signed him for no reason whatsoever. The Rockies signed him to a massive contract in the offseason. Like a team that also let a lot of their good players walk because they didn't want to pay them in recent years. So they let Trevor Story walk in free agency, didn't trade him for anything. They let Nolan Arenado walk, and then they give $182 million to Chris Bryant in the offseason.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
He is over the age of 30 also.
White Sox and Royals. White Sox are solid favorites here. Michael Kopech and Daniel Lynch going in this one. Brad Keller scratched in case you missed that. Kopech, 10% owned today. I have a little bit more than that. I just think he looks sort of, to me, he's the best guy in this lower tier range. I like him a little bit more than Domingo Herman, but I am basically around the field. So I don't have like a giant stand on Kopech. He's just a guy that I completely agree with the ownership.
Yeah, also, I think comparing him to Domingo Herman on DK makes a whole bunch of sense. We have a better projection on Kopech. He also has about half the projected ownership. So I think that's a good pivot to make going to Kopech instead of Herman. I do have a bet on Kopech today, under 5.5 strikeouts. That looked a little bit high to me at open. Because as good as his stuff is, he just hasn't generated all that many strikeouts. But here's the difference. Earlier in the year, if we were rostering Michael Kopech outside of his first couple starts of the season, he was an actual pay-up pitcher. He's now $7,000 on DK, which is very serviceable as an SP2 option, $8,200 over on FanDuel. It's just a different salary price that we're looking at him as compared to the earlier in the year. It's a Royals team that also has started to trade some players as we're approaching the trade deadline. It's not a particularly good lineup, and it's hard to find cheap pitchers that I really like today. And relative to the other options that we have in the 7K range, we got Domingo Herman, Cal Quantrill, Nathan Eovaldi, who's pitching on the road against the Astros. If I'm just looking at all the names, I do think Kopech is the best option of all those pitchers if you guys are building a lineup and need a pitcher in that price range.
On the offense side of this one, the Royals are third in ownership, seventh in top stack. They are basically the second best value stack behind the Tigers. You trying to get to the opposite side of Kopech?
No, this is very odd ownership to me. I don't understand why the Royals are picking up as much ownership as they are. Like, cool. If people are rostering Salvador Perez at catcher, I guess that makes sense. Vinny Pasquantino is a really well-regarded prospect, and he's really cheap. MJ Melendez has catcher eligibility also. So I guess that's something that drives ownership towards him. But still, on the whole, this is a bad offense. And I don't want to make a habit of rostering a bad offense against a pitcher who, while he has underwhelmed this year relative to our expectations, it's not like Kopech has been bad. He just hasn't been great for fantasy because he's been overpriced and hasn't delivered strikeout upside. But the overall numbers for Kopech, he's a 3.16 ERA and a 3.81 expected ERA. He's not been a disaster on the mound. So I think the Royals are going pretty overowned.
I have like a pretty decent amount of the Royals, like close to the field, but it's barely showing up in any stacks. It's a lot of like two mans. And I think that makes a lot more sense for the way they're set up. Like Melendez obviously fits very well in lineups. Pasquantino at 2,200 easily fits into lineups. You know, even if you wanted to go to Perez, like I get all the, how they're very easy to stack because of what I'm going to read off right now. 6 out of the 9 guys are sub 2,800. The other guys are only in the 4s, and then they should be. Here are their positions: catcher / outfield, second, catcher, first / outfield, first, outfield, third / short, and short. They fit into like the natural positions and not just bucketed outfielders. And I think that's why they're pulling probably a little bit more ownership. But like I said, I am getting to them in a very different way. I only have them in 7 5-man stacks out of 150, but I have them in a bunch of 2-mans and just individual one-offs. So they're ending up in a lot of an individual Royal with like a Yankee stack or an individual Royal with a Guardian stack. So I'm getting a lot of ownership, but it's not just me jamming 5 of them. And I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I mean there are some individual hitters that, like I said, if somebody was rostering Pascantillo for ownership or for savings reasons, or Salvador Perez at catcher, Salvador Perez, he was one of the league leaders in home runs from the catcher position last year. That all makes sense. I just don't really see it as a 5-man stack because there's so many shitty hitters in this lineup. It falls off in a hurry. You get to the end of the lineup. I don't even Nick Prado, Michael Garcia. We're just combining players' names together at this point. So it's really weak towards the end of the lineup.
White Sox stacks here. They are third in our top stack tool, 7th in ownership. I like them as well. This is a team that I am currently over the field on. This is my 5th most exposed team overall. They are 4th, though, in terms of just my stacks. I like the White Sox.
Yep, the pitching change definitely helps them also. Daniel Lynch is a much worse starting pitcher than what Brad Keller is. Something else to consider, he's a left-handed pitcher, whereas Keller's a right-hand pitcher. The White Sox are better against lefties than righties. They're also priced to face. What's that?
They're running out 9 righties today.
Yeah, which they were probably going to be doing anyway because they don't really have good left-handed bats on their team for the most part. We look at the numbers this year for Lynch, 5.05 ERA, 4.5 expected ERA. And then also you just have a White Sox team that's slightly underpriced because they were priced to face a different starting pitcher is a little bit better. So the White Sox make a whole bunch of sense. There's not that many times that we get spots you could point to as being value situations for baseball because of a late scratch. This is one of them, though, kind of NBA-esque type late scratch where players are just not priced for the spot they're in.
Alrighty. Anything else in this game?
No, I think we've covered it.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Odds Shopper, guys, presenting sponsor of this video. If you go to oddshopper.com, you're going to get a tool that is completely free for your use, and it will unquestionably help you. And I don't see any way that it could possibly hurt you. If you're sports betting and you're just looking for lines, it's going to allow you to look at a bunch of different sports books at the exact same time so that you can get the best line possible. Right away, that's going to help you. It doesn't hurt anybody else. It hurts the books because you're just going to always get the best line. You should want that. We don't need to give the sports books any more money. Or if you're more interested in like the player prop side of this one, our projections are there, our expected win rate, our expected ROI, the hold on the bet, all of that is locked and loaded for you. You can just simply sort by expected ROI and work your way down if you really want to. And as I mentioned at the top of this read, it's completely free. You'll have to sign up with an email address. That's it. It doesn't really get any better than that. If sports betting is not legal in your state, I still think it's a pretty good tool to look through player props if you're trying to prep for a slate or even just totals and sides. And you'll get yourself a little bit more familiar with the tool as you slowly but surely get closer to a legal sportsbook state. So go check out oddshopper.com, everybody. I promise you it will help you out.
Yeah, and then also, if you are not in a legal sports betting state, there's a pretty good chance that you have prize picks in your state, which you could also use our projections for the props over there. I have 4 bets that I placed today that were numbers that, number one, are in my MLB betting video that I did earlier in the day, but also stuff that I helped find with the help of Odd Shopper. So I have Andrew Heaney under 5.5 strikeouts, Mike Clevenger under 5.5 strikeouts, Cal Quantrill under 4.5 strikeouts, and Michael Kopech under 5.5 strikeouts. So those were the 4 bets I placed this morning.
Bingo. Astros and Red Sox. Astros are the favorites in this one. Luis Garcia and Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi pulling a little bit of ownership at 7,600. Tough spot against this Houston team, although a little bit better with no Bregman in the lineup. Garcia, though, 32% owned, and I think that might even be a little low. That $8,600 price tag to me looks good. I don't think that this Boston lineup is all that good. Christian Vasquez has been scratched, so make sure you're getting him out of any lineups that you do have. As of this moment, I imagine I don't have any, so there's that. Talk to me about Garcia.
Yeah. So the only thing we have to be somewhat concerned with is Houston's generally pretty conservative with his pitch count, but that gets mitigated by the fact that he's fairly cheap today relative to where I think he should be priced. $8,600 on DraftKings. That's too cheap. 10,200 on FanDuel. I'd rather just play Max Scherzer. We've got Luis Garcia projected for 15% ownership, whereas Scherzer is 13% owned. I'd rather play Scherzer if I'm paying up for pitcher at those kind of splits. On DK, though, we have to roster 2 pitchers. Scherzer and Luis Garcia, my 2 most rostered pitchers today. The spot, I get it. People might look at the Red Sox, just the name of the team, be like, well, that's not an easy matchup. But look at the Red Sox lineup, the bottom of it now. And like you just said, Christian Vasquez just got traded to the Astros. So he's not in Houston's lineup today, but I assume he's going to be active for them. He just has to walk to the other side of the field and he's good to go. There's no Rafael Devers. He's on the injured list right now. So the end of the lineup here, it's the Red Sox backup catcher. I didn't see who they ended up slotting in a catcher instead. Then you got Yolmer Sanchez, Frenchie Cordero, Bobby Dahlback, who's by and large been bad this year, Christian Arroyo. So once you get past the first few bats in the lineup, it's a lot of easy outs to be had. So as long as Luis Garcia is able to work around the likes of Xander Bogaerts, JD Martinez, Alex Verdugo to a smaller extent, it is a fairly easy matchup. All the tougher bats are kind of grouped together. There's outs to be had at the end of the lineup. So yeah, I think Luis Garcia, much too cheap on DraftKings, great source of salary savings.
46% of my lineups at this moment. I hope he somehow comes in like slightly under-owned and I can get a little bit better of a benefit for it. Are you getting to either the Houston bats or the Red Sox bats in this one?
So the Red Sox bats, no, it's really hard for me to reason, especially like, I have to roster 5 of them. I don't like 5 of their hitters. We have them with the 4th lowest top stack odds on the slate. As far as Houston goes, they're really low owned, and I kind of think they're worth getting to. Nathan Eovaldi has generally been really good over the last couple of seasons, but he had a stint on the injured list, and he's looked fairly miserable since coming back, which is definitely concerning whenever a pitcher's a long layoff and they come back and start putting up the numbers that Eovaldi has. So only 2 starts for Eovaldi since coming off the injured list. He has pitched 8 2/3 innings and given up 14 runs. So those have not been great. You okay there? Did you drop something?
I was just taking my shoes off.
Oh, okay. Anyway, yeah. So Eovaldi, just considering his struggles since coming off the injured list, I think he's a targetable pitcher. He's been a total train wreck.
I didn't get to a single 5-man stack of either side of this game. I wouldn't mind if I got to the Astros just because they're the Astros and there's the overwhelming amount of talent in this lineup. But for right now, I don't have it. It's just all one-offs and at best like a 2-man stack. So nothing here for me.
Yeah, and it's not like Houston's my favorite team on the slate. I just think 3% ownership, it's a team worth being a little bit overweight to the field too, just because I have some concerns with Eovaldi. Number one, his velocity is way down since coming off the injured list, and the results just haven't been there.
All right, next up, Padres and Rockies. Padres big favorites here, Mike Clevinger and Antonio Senzatella. I'm not even going to ask you if you're getting to Senzatella. Mike Clevinger, though, 34% owned for today. I know that the Rockies are dog shit outside of Colorado. I have no doubt about that. I feel like Clevenger's pulling a bit more ownership than he should be at this moment. I am significantly under the field. I don't see him as all that different than Skubal, but right now, Clevinger is the guy that I'm taking the biggest negative stand on.
By the way, neither do our projections. If you look at the top pitchers tool, 16% chance for Clevinger to be a top 2 scoring pitcher, Skubal at 14%, yet Skubal 13% owned compared to now 36.4 for Mike Clevinger in the most recent ownership update. That is a lot of ownership going to Mike Clevinger. And I get it's a good matchup. He's also pitched fairly solidly this year, but he hasn't shown to have a massive amount of upside reliably. And in a sneaky way, the Rockies, while it's an abysmal offense, both on the road and against right-hand pitching, they don't strike out all that much. 21st in strikeouts against right-hand pitching for the year. And then you've got Clevinger, a lot of his individual starts, he just hasn't shown all that much strikeout upside. His last start was against the Detroit Tigers. He struck out 5 hitters. I believe his strikeout prop was 6.5 in that spot. So he's had some really easy matchups and generally hasn't really come through on them. He's had a high floor, but hasn't really delivered that much ceiling. It's a good spot for him. If he was to have a big game, I can't say I would be totally surprised, but I'd rather roster Gray, Luis Garcia, or Max Scherzer. I think that of the chalk pitchers, Clevenger's the weakest of the 4.
I agree. Padres bats are 8th in ownership, 10th in top stack. Rockies are dead last. Basically, I don't think I'm going to be asking I guess it's a reasonable question, but maybe it's not. I think avoiding Clevinger or just not playing Clevinger is the sort of better option than actually trying to stack against Clevinger. Are you getting to Colorado because of the ownership, or is it just one of those things where like they're still shitty? I'd rather just not have all of the Clevinger.
Yeah, just shitty. And then the other thing also that hurts, Chris Bryant not being in the lineup. No trade, at least not as of now, doesn't mean that there can't be a trade or that this was just reported incorrectly, but it appears he was scratched due to a foot injury, not because he has been traded. But as things stand right now, there's just not enough firepower in this offense. And Clevinger has been decent enough this year. 3.38 ERA, 3.5 expected ERA that I would rather look elsewhere with my offenses.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Senzatella on the other side either. As a pitcher, he's not good. His numbers are a little inflated from all the starts he has to make at Coors Field, but he kind of generally tends to avoid getting totally destroyed in his starts because he's such a high ground ball pitcher. A lot of Senzatella starts are going to look like these recent starts. He's only had one start this year. He's given up more than 5 runs. This is more or less what a lot of his outings look like. His recent starts, 3 runs, 3 runs, 3 runs, 4 runs, 1 run, 3 run, 1 run. So it's just a lot of starts where it's like, oh, look, he pitched 6 innings, gave up 3 runs, 5 innings, 3 runs. It's not starts that you would want from your fantasy starting pitcher ever, but generally if you stack against him, you aren't getting great results either. So I'm not all that interested in the Padres either.
Neither am I. I have 4 one-offs with a Padre, and that's it. So, and I don't have the Rockies at all. This is my least exposed game.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, so Tommy Pham traded to the Red Sox. He was reportedly traded somewhere else before. Or now it is the Red Sox. I don't know where it was reported before. I know I read it off, but I forgot.
I don't know, but interesting that he's going to Boston.
It was traded by the Reds. Now we know he's going to the Red Sox. So the Red Sox buying and selling at the same time, weirdly.
Good luck with that, Red Sox. And good luck to the people watching this video. Hit that like button. I want to give you guys good luck. You can get some good karma by hitting that like button, running that number up a bit. I think we could run down 300 before we get out of here. As we close out with Giants and Dodgers, Logan Webb and Andrew Heaney. Webb's good, not really like a great DFS pitcher, but certainly a really good real life pitcher. Heaney potentially limited, sort of limited, can go deep enough, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. Are you getting to Heaney or Webb?
No, it's really hard for me to reasonably want to roster pitchers against the Dodgers. And especially Logan Webb, who, while he has been really good from a real life perspective this year, ERA sub-3, his numbers look fairly similar to last year. Strikeouts are down a little bit, which is really what becomes concerning because it's really hard to totally shut down the Dodgers offense. I figure he's going to give up at least a couple of runs while also limiting the damage, but there's not enough strikeouts to really offset that. There's other pitchers I'd rather get to. So I'm not getting to Logan Webb. But I'm not stacking against him either. This is probably the biggest disagreement I have with the Top Stacks tool, which likes the Dodgers a lot as a low-owned team. The thing that makes it so hard for me is 21 starts this year for Logan Webb. He has given up more than 4 earned runs in 0 of them. So I just don't know what the upside is in stacking against Logan Webb, considering he's been so consistently solid this year. I think the most likely outcome is he pitches like 6 innings, gives up 2 runs, 7 innings, 3 runs, but doesn't generate enough strikeouts to where he's fantasy viable. The Dodgers probably aren't going to be against him either.
Yeah, I think we're a little heavy on Dodgers from a top stack percentage. Yeah. I have them 10th overall at a 5% chance. So like, I do think they're going slightly under-owned. And if you're ever going to bet on a team that's slightly under-owned, like betting on the Dodgers is kind of the way to do it. They certainly have the raw talent. They are not a team that I am getting to today. So I hope they're relatively quiet. I am, however, getting to a little bit of the Giants. I think it's just a price thing. They're just sort of free like they normally are. Who knows if Heaney can get chased pretty quickly. I hate targeting the Giants at all, but I do have a small amount. They are basically unowned as well. And I think that's sort of the reason that I'm getting there. Plus, get a little bit of a benefit from the fact that Heaney's pulling a little bit of ownership. So I have a small amount of the Giants, nothing crazy, nothing that I'm like really advocating for.
Yeah, it's weird to me that Heaney's picking up nearly 10% ownership because he pitched 4 innings in his last start. I don't know how deep he's going to go into the game. And it's not like he pitched 4 bad innings last. He pitched 4 shutout innings. So he was going pretty well and they still yanked him early. He's had good results this year. It's only been 19 innings though. One thing I did bet, I mentioned before when I was giving out my bets, I've under 5.5 strikeouts for Andrew Heaney. It just makes sense to me when you consider that he only pitched 4 innings in his last start. Like, how could I have any kind of confidence that he's going to work deep into the game at all? So Andrew Heaney to me is not a pitcher I want to get to. And then Chuck Deuce is saying he just gave up 4 runs against the Diamondbacks. No, his last start was a shutout against the Nationals. It was only 4 innings, but he hasn't pitched.
Also, neither of those things matter.
No, neither of those things matter, but it's also incorrect. So none of it matters overall because it's information that is irrelevant and doesn't even exist. So as far as Heaney goes, I just don't think he's going to work particularly deep into the game. I don't like stacking the Giants in general because the pinch hitting stuff is a total nightmare. But Heaney was so terrible last year that I could see the upside in stacking against him. A lot of these right-handed bats for the Giants that are, like you said, unowned anyway. He had an ERA of almost 6 last year. He had an 18.1% home run to fly ball rate with a 33% ground ball rate. He's not generating ground balls this year either to this point, 35%. So I could see some upside in stacking against him when the Giants are totally unknown as a contrarian stack.
Anything else you want to touch on for the entirety of this slate? Since the deeper dive boys went a little long, we lock in 3.5 minutes. I was going to open this up for questions, but and we still can, but I don't know if that's going to be all that actionable. Late slate stuff, maybe.
Apologies to Chuck Deuces. He said that that was for a different pitcher. Was it for Logan Webb maybe that he was talking about? It was not. I just looked up and read the comments. It was not an Andrew Heaney one. So apologies to Chuck Deuces. Did not.
I, on the other hand, don't apologize because I don't care that anybody gave up anything to anyone in their last start. So Jake Nunley wants to know if I'm ready for basketball. Yes.
So the other thing too is it's not like he gave up 4 runs. It's not a disaster either. And that's also the most he's given up the entire season.
There you go. 2 minutes and 50 seconds. I hope you guys have your lineups in. I got mine in a while ago. Feel good.
Yeah, they want to know if you're ready for basketball season. We're still a little whiles away from basketball. I'm excited for the season. I'm always excited for the start of basketball, but we've got a little bit of time to go.
I don't have a little bit of time to go. I got to start prepping within the next couple days, all of my projections for best ball. That is locked and loaded and ready to go. And I need to start projecting out games played and minutes played so that I can get my full season projections ready.
There we go. Are you excited? Are you excited to do that?
I actually am. I mean, like, it's something that I was going to do anyway. And now I actually have like a reason to do it instead of just like for my own personal interest. So,
yeah, I haven't done it because I used to assist with it over at Basketball Monster. It's been a minute since I've just went down. I've done it for best ball, not like incredibly thoroughly, more so to just make like a general sense of like, okay, these are the guys I want to target in drafts. But we'll see. Depending on how much time I have available, I might also do that for basketball this year.
Friend of the program and newly minted Stokastic employee Neil Orfield says, basketball. We have months of football first. I wish the football season would get canceled. I wish they would all be Deshaun Watson and they'd all get suspended. I cannot wait till that football season is over. More importantly, I cannot wait until football season hits the 3rd week of October and I can really stop caring.
Yeah, Neil's saying you don't mean it. Trust me, Josh means it 100%. I've been doing shows with him for a little while. He does not enjoy football. I like fantasy football because I could put money on it, but I would not watch football if I didn't have money on it. The only 2 sports I would watch if I didn't have money on it would be basketball, and I could watch MMA forever. Those would be the 2 sports I would watch. I'm pretty sure there's nothing else I would watch without money on it.
I watch soccer regularly without it. That would be my number 1 for sure. I actually like NFL Showdown. Like I don't hate those particular slates. I think it's a different mechanism. And at the very least, you're watching, like, it's the only thing in town. I like the product of Red Zone, but at the same time, like from a sweat perspective, it's just like, it never stops. And I can't stand it. That feeling of like not having the first touchdown and immediately wanting to just like shotgun a vodka bottle is the worst.
Yeah, so there's 2 things. This is the one thing that's similar so NFL DFS, the first touchdown is scored, and I immediately go look at my exposure to see if I'm over or underweights the field. I immediately think that's what's going to determine the entire slate for me. Same as baseball when the first homer's hit of the day. I always go and check my ownership and like, am I screwed or not? It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It feels like it does at the time though.
I think it's funny that you see the first touchdown and check your exposures to see if you're over or under, because I'm quite confident that the first touchdown is always a guy that I do not have. Yeah. And it's probably chalk.
It's either, you know what it usually is? It's either somebody who's chalk or it's somebody that's 1.2% owned that's about to score 3 touchdowns and ruin the slate.
Yes. Yeah. It's never like, oh, wow, this was the guy I took a stand on. It's never that guy.
Yeah, it's not like the 8% on T.Y. Hilton that you have 20% exposure to.
No.
Exactly, AD Poker, it's Jamal Agnew. It's always Jamal Agnew. If it's not Jamal Agnew, it's Jamal Agnew with a different name.
Well, folks, that is it. We are at lock. Good luck tonight. Hit that like button on your way out the door if you can. will help us out tremendously. We're back tomorrow, doing it all again. So adios, everybody. Good luck. We're out. Peace.